this morning. Your boy had to do some planning and some setting things up and being my own AAA, essentially, making sure that we have everything set for San Diego that's coming up in just a few days as the Syracuse Orange will be taking on the Washington State Cougars, sans 20 some odd players plus their head coach. Their starting quarterback's already in Oklahoma, so it'll be interesting. But for everybody saying, oh man, this is so easy for Syracuse, look at what they got. Remember last year when I was at the Boca Raton Bowl down in Boca Raton, Florida, when Syracuse was without their quarterback, without their star receiver, who plays tight end, Aronde Gadsden II. Their head coach had been fired, and the staff was not all there. So remember that, because South Florida was a full go. South Florida had a full team ready to go. They blew Syracuse out, and some people anticipate that with Syracuse being at full go. The coaching staff has told me from Syracuse University, straight from the staff, that no one has opted out of this game. So at least my hometown is doing things right. With that being said, we are here on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora, where sports meets life, inside of ModPodPopcorn.com's What's Poppin'. And I'm going to be able to intro this show next week with a whole new edition. I can't wait. I've had to stop myself from saying it multiple times, but officially on January 1st, I will be able to tell you what's going down, what's happening. Also on January 1st, by the grace of God, I will be down at the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl. So I'm excited for that. And I will be watching Texas, who I consider one of the best teams in the country for the majority of this season. I will see Texas face off against Arizona State. So a lot of good stuff coming up. Check out my show with President, CEO of Peach Bowl, Inc., Gary Stokin, who oversees the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl, about the history of Arizona State and how the Peach Bowl actually is credited with helping to create the Fiesta Bowl. So 2 out of the 6 New Year's 6 bowls that are now all in the college football playoff have a direct connection to each other. The Peach Bowl actually helped to bring about the creation of the Fiesta Bowl. If you want to find out how and its connection to Arizona State, then make sure you watch that show on youtube.com/wakeupcalldt. It's also on Facebook. I'll share it on facebook.com/wakeupcalldt as well. And always many thanks to Gary Stokin, Matt Garvey, and the entire team at the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl and Peach Bowl Inc. for all the work they do. They have the Aflac kickoff game, which Syracuse will be in next season against Tennessee. There's actually a doubleheader. Syracuse is going to have the first game to start off the season. So very much excited about all of that. Excited about bowl season, the college football playoff. I'm fresh off being on the road to Happy Valley. Was at Penn State just 2 days ago. And now I'm here to talk to you about it, as well as the first round of the college football playoff with Murph. It's DT and Murphy. Of course, it is Christmas Eve tomorrow and Christmas Day. We will be off, but I prepared you something for tomorrow. You will not want to miss an exclusive behind-the-curtain season in review look at the 2024 Bryan and Stratton Syracuse women's soccer team, who now for 4 consecutive years have advanced to the national championship game and have won a national championship within these last 4 years. You don't want to miss that conversation with Alex Grigorita from campus at Bryan and Stratton College of Syracuse with the Bobcats women's soccer head coach. So that's coming up for your Christmas Eve. And then, of course, Christmas Day will be off. And on December 26th, God willing, your boy will be in the air, flying out to San Diego to see the Syracuse Orange take on the Washington State Cougars. So, with that being said, Murph joins me picture-in-picture to talk all things college football playoff. We are fresh off of an historic moment in the college football playoff and college football in general, as the playoff has expanded to 12 teams. The FCS is looking at the FBS going, you guys still haven't gotten it, though. You still don't have enough teams. You still don't do the bracket like we do the bracket. But they're getting there. And the college football playoff, 12 teams, first round for the first time ever. I was on site, on location, making history with these wonderful teams in this wonderful moment. I was out in Happy Valley for the SMU Mustangs of the ACC in their first season in the ACC, going up against Penn State Nittany Lions inside of the Big Ten. That game was lopsided on the side of Penn State. Clemson in Texas was actually a good one. And then we saw Ohio State
for most of the game.
Yeah, I mean, Clemson, Texas made it a really good game. I think the people were describing it like, oh, Clemson's getting trounced. Clemson's getting bounced out of this game. This is a blowout. It's not even a game. I went back and I'm looking at the highlights and I'm looking at this game. Clemson scored first, and all the way down the stretch, I mean, they at least made it a game, and it was almost a one-possession game late. So
The score was was
yeah,
not evident of how that game was at
well,
all.
getting to see them get close was nice, and then seeing Ohio State blew out Tennessee. Of course, Notre Dame, that game at the end where people, oh, Indiana, they came within 10, this and that. They did have some fun stuff with an onside kick. They did do some things, but that game was relatively over early. And then on the side of the game that I was at, Penn State handled SMU, and SMU did a lot to help Penn State handle them, having 3 interceptions thrown by Kevin Jennings in the first half of the game. The first 2 were returned for touchdowns. The third one led to the first offensive touchdown of the game for Penn State. Drew Aller did not throw a touchdown pass in the game. I think he had 121 yards, but this team ended up handling SMU. And, when you make mistakes like that, especially that get returned for touchdowns, very hard to win the game. I think SMU beat themselves early, and then Penn State took care of the rest in the second half. So, with all of that being said, Murph and I are going to talk to you about the first round, get you set for the second round, and guess what? We got the bracket up here, and we get to fill in what we think's going to happen from here as well. Murph, how we doing?
We're doing good. I'm still a little cold from being out on the mountain last night. First time out on skis this year, and it was about 5 degrees last night when I was out there. So it was pretty cold, but had a nice little weekend. Watched the PNC Championship. Tiger and Charlie made it to a playoff with Bernard and his son Jason Langer, and Bernard and Jason emerged victorious in the playoff. Unfortunate for Tiger and Charlie, but that's okay. Charlie also made a hole in one,
Yep.
which was pretty cool. If you haven't seen that, it was pretty awesome to see. Tiger, I think, was more excited than Charlie. And then when Tiger explained to Charlie that he had to buy drinks for everybody, he goes, "Well, I'm broke." But it's a tradition for the person that makes a hole in one to buy drinks for everybody on the course, and at an event like that, it costs a pretty penny. I imagine Tiger probably picked up the tab, but Charlie actually wasn't alone because Patrick Harrington's son, also made a hole in one on the eighth hole, so they got to split the bill, which was pretty nice. But I'm sure Tiger and Pat and Podrick picked up the tabs for them because, Tiger's a billionaire and Podrick Harrington's got some money too. So, it was cool. I knew we weren't going to talk about that very much. I just wanted to get that in the beginning, and then, we can talk a little college football. It's going to be a fun debate. You and I both know we're going to disagree on some things, but it's always a fun debate when we talk college football, especially with the expansion of the playoff now.
Well, and a shout out to Tiger. My dad was watching. Shout out to Tiger. Shout out to everyone that got to play with their kids. And for the
It's
whole,
such a fun event.
yeah, it is awesome, and happy to see that. Happy to see this moment for 2 hole-in-ones. Happy to see it for the families, and just an exciting event to get to do something like that. I learned how to play golf because of my dad, with my dad. So to see that on the grand scale with these tremendous players, and obviously some of that's, some of those genes obviously going into the next generation is a really cool thing to see. So I'm happy they do it. I congratulate everybody that was involved, and I implore and hope that we get to see more of these star athletes with their kids in the not too distant future. We do have some thoughts that came in. Jerry said, "Go Irish." Jerry, you got it right, brother. So good for you on that one. Let's see what else we got here. So we got a good morning from Mom. Good morning back to you. Greg said baseball lost one of their absolute greats this weekend. Yes, and
Yeah.
Ricky Henderson. And said a prayer for Ricky and his family. May he rest in peace. And in honor of Ricky Henderson and everyone who's passed on here in 2024, I would like to take a true moment of silence for each of them. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. May they rest in peace. May they be in heaven, safe and sound, reunited with their loved ones that have also passed on. And may their loved ones here on earth be safe and sound with their loved ones as well. May they all be connected, even in death, just like Ricky with his family, because Jesus dying, you destroyed our death, and rising, you restored our life. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. God bless you, Ricky. Thank you for all the years you gave us, and thank you for helping total strangers to feel like they knew you. Mets fans got an early Christmas gift. Sean Manaea is going to be a Met for 3 more
Yes,
years.
sir.
Greg said happy Festivus. And then Greg said, how great of a tight end is Warren going to be in the NFL? Now that's a first-round pick. Yeah, I got to watch Tyler Warren.
I'd like him.
Yeah,
I'd like him on the Jets, please.
Yeah, I got to watch him firsthand right there. Alan says good morning. So we got a lot to talk about. We're going to do these games one by one. So we're going to start off college football playoff once again. The expansion has happened. We are living in it. We are living in history. There's never been a first round to the college football playoff, and there will never be a quarterfinal round to the college football playoff again in its inaugural history here. So the first time we have a first round, first time we have a quarterfinal round, both of those making history this year. I was on site for the first, and I look forward to being on site next week for the quarterfinals at the Peach Bowl and covering the college football playoff in its entirety. So, Murph, I will defer to you here after I give some background. For those of you who didn't see it, here's a little catch-up. Indiana at Notre Dame. Indiana had an interception. Surratt had a huge catch after that, but Notre Dame got an interception and got the ball back. So that was crazy. Jeremiah Love, 98-yard touchdown run, took it out of his own end zone and got to the outside, ran down the left sideline. If you watch that live like I did, it was absolutely incredible. Shout out to Jeremiah Love. 7-0 Notre Dame at the time. Then Jaden Thomas had a touchdown catch that made it 14-0 Notre Dame. And then from there, Aeneas Williams had a run, and then Mitch Jeter had a field goal after that run to make it 17-3 Notre Dame at the half. And then we saw a Jeter field goal in the second half, made it 20-3. And then James Carpenter of Indiana blocked Jeter's field goal try. Leonard had a pass downfield. Riley Leonard, those of you that know, he's been on the show. I interviewed Riley. He was choosing between Syracuse and Duke in his final 2. He chose Duke. He went there for a couple seasons. I got to see somebody that I consider a friend, somebody I made a connection with here, and I got to see him grow at Duke, become a starter at Duke, and then went off to Notre Dame. What I love more than anything about Riley Leonard is he talks about God every chance he gets, it seems, and I love that. Leonard had a pass downfield later on in the game. They got to the 1-yard line. Then he faked the handoff, took it in himself. 27-3 Notre Dame at that time. And then Cooper Jr. had a touchdown grab that made it 27-17 Notre Dame with 25 seconds to go. So this game was out of hand. It was a 4-score game, 27-3. And then later on in the game, Indiana tried to have some late heroics as Notre Dame was trying to button this thing up. Thoughts on the game?
Yeah, don't let that score fool you. This game was an absolute blowout. 20, Indiana made it a game at the end, but with 25 seconds left. Anybody who took Notre Dame to cover, I'm not sure what the final line was. It was 8.5. So actually, no, it was 6.5. So I'm anybody that had Notre Dame minus 6.5 was probably sweating a little bit at the end. But yeah, this was not a contest. Indiana was completely outclassed. But at the same time, I don't think this tells us much about Notre Dame. I think this tells us more about Indiana than it tells us about Notre Dame. Because Notre Dame's been a team that obviously after they lost to Northern Illinois started to figure things out.
Yeah.
After that game, it definitely woke them up because I don't think anybody that watched that game can tell you that Notre Dame probably took them lightly and they lost. It happens. Teams have lost big games like that. Michigan lost to Appalachian State all those years ago. And, it's happened since. But Notre Dame rebounded. They played a decent schedule as they do. They don't play the toughest schedule in the world, but, they play decent decent opponents. Like they played Texas A&M, beat them handily. They beat Louisville. They beat Georgia Tech, who had been a scary team earlier on. They blew out Navy when they were ranked 24th. Florida State at the beginning of the year, I would have expected to be a really good game.
Yeah.
It was not,
Yeah.
because we all know that how bad Florida State was this year. And then they handled Virginia, they handled Army, they handled USC at USC, and then they just handled Indiana in the playoffs. So I don't think it tells us all that much about Notre Dame, because Notre Dame we knew was going to be a decent team coming in. They're gonna go up and play. They were the 7 seed, so they're gonna get to play Georgia. That's going to be an interesting game because Georgia's gonna probably be without Carson Beck. We'll see what happens there. But Indiana, and we were chatting about this on on Saturday night. The thing with Indiana, or Friday night, sorry. The thing with Indiana, and everybody, the reason they got in the playoff in the first place was simply because they didn't want to put a 3-loss team in.
They got in because they're in the Big Ten.
I think they got in because they didn't want to put in a 3-loss team because they were never putting Army.
That was part of it.
I'm sorry, but they were never putting Army.
Well, and
it was never a debate.
As my buddy said, and I agree with him, 11-1 in the winner of a conference championship, you've earned the right to get that butt whooping. So if Army was going to get whooped, they earned the right to be there and have it, just like Boise State did years ago in the BCS, just like UCF did. This was a sign of everything that I said. Indiana won 11 games against unranked teams. They didn't play in their conference.
So did Army.
Army played in the conference championship and blew out Tulane, who was a good team.
Who just got granted
without their quarterback.
Didn't have their quarterback.
Without their quarterback.
Just got their doors blown off by
without
Florida.
Their quarterback.
A middle of the pack SEC team.
And most teams without their quarterback will lose. Most quality teams, most high-end teams that will lose. So that Tulane game against Florida is not even in question. It's not even a thought, because if you don't have your starting quarterback, who's your star guy, who obviously people wanted in the portal, that says something about what they had. Just like Washington State. Washington State lost their quarterback to Oklahoma. I don't anticipate their backup quarterback is going to be just as good as him. There's a reason why there's a backup.
God, I hate the transfer portal.
So, but Indiana,
it's so stupid.
As I posted after the game, and listen, I want to be clear. I'm very proud of Indiana. Their former head coach, Tom Allen, who's now the defensive coordinator at Penn State, who I got to talk to after the game, he was in a position there where I felt like he was trying to make some changes to try some and do some good things, and I was really hoping that they would. I'm happy Indiana won 11-1. Who would have thought that Indiana would ever go 11-1 in today's college football? But they did. My only issue is this is how they did it. And if this is all the Big Ten needs to do, then you're going to see a bunch of teams make it to the college football playoff that shouldn't be there. This is what Indiana did to get into the college football playoff. This is their record that I am more than happy to share with you. Now, I had the record up here. Let me make sure that I bring it back up again. But Indiana, in this season, out of conference and in conference, did not win a single game against a ranked team. Oh, I put it a little bit farther back. That's why I didn't have it here. So FIU, Western Illinois, UCLA, Charlotte, Maryland, Northwestern, Nebraska, Washington, Michigan State, Michigan. People, oh, they beat Michigan. Michigan had 5 losses this year. Who also beat Ohio State. And by the way, A equals B and B equals C, so A equals C did not work in that case because they beat Michigan, who beat Ohio State. Then they got bounced by Ohio State by 23 points on the road. And then they beat Purdue, who didn't win a single game in the Big Ten this year. So when I look at this schedule and I hear people say, well, the American doesn't deserve to get in because look at their schedule. And the Conference USA and the Sun Belt, they don't deserve to get in because look at their schedule. Boise State, outside of playing Oregon, their schedule isn't wow. Their schedule isn't crazy. But we look at this schedule for Indiana, and I say, FIU, Western Illinois, okay. Those are 2 teams you play out of conference. Charlotte was out of conference. And then the rest of not a single ranked win. And I had given them credit because I thought they played Illinois, which they didn't. But which was at the bottom of the top 25 anyways. Not a single ranked win the entire season. The only team that they played of any merit in the rankings, they lost to by 23 points. So the argument of Army doesn't deserve to be there because Army doesn't play ranked teams. Well, guess what? Army played a conference championship. Army won a conference championship. They went undefeated their first season in the conference in the American Athletic. And so if I got an 11-1 conference champion and I got an 11-1 did absolutely nothing and not a champion, I'm going to let Army go in because the people that say Army would have gotten bounced, Ohio State got bounced. Washington got bounced. Notre Dame, their last 2 trips to the college football playoff, they got bounced. So if you can, unless Army can score, and I've said it before about UCF, unless Army can score less than 0 points, they can't look any worse than Ohio State did against Clemson years ago when they got shut out. So unless you can get more than shut out, and keep in mind, the national championship game most recently was a blowout. So the whole we can't put Army in because they're going to get blown out. We've seen a national champion blowout. We have seen Notre Dame get spanked. We've seen Washington get spanked. We've seen Ohio State get spanked. It's just the reality of the matchup. Army should have been in this thing. They were 11-1. No one represented the American. Army won a conference championship, and they won a conference championship by multiple scores. Indiana, before they played Ohio State, there was something there, and this is when I tell you that things are already set up to help people. On a certain network, before the game was played, they said if Indiana loses to Ohio State, they have a 96% chance of getting in the college football playoff. When did you think you would ever hear that you had almost 100% certainty of advancing to the national tournament for a championship when you lose? And they lost by 23. And didn't the committee say that they take a look at wins and margin of victory, and even if it's an unranked team, how much you beat them by? Well, Indiana got completely embarrassed against Ohio State, but before the game was even played, it was running on television that they were going to get into the college football playoff no matter what happened in that game. And if that's what you're saying going into the game, then that is essentially telling people we've already made our minds up. Weeks before this, that was 3 weeks before the season ended. They had already made their mind up. Indiana lost to Ohio State. They didn't care. Indiana beat Purdue, who didn't win a single game in the Big Ten. They beat them 66-0. Apparently that's a good win, even though Purdue was awful this year. And then they don't play in the Big Ten tournament. They should not have been in this thing. It was the one firm disagreement I have with the committee. I commend the Hoosiers on being 11-1. No matter who you play, it's hard to do. I respect them. I appreciate them. But respecting and appreciating and thinking that this is a really great historic season for them is far different than saying that they deserve to get in over a conference champion with the same record. And I can make other arguments. They weren't going to let a 3-loss team in. They let that be known this year. But Alabama, Ole Miss, South Carolina, all deserve to have that spot over Indiana, but they had 3 losses. So if you're not going to take a 3-loss team and you're going to stick to 1 or 2 losses, Army won their championship, and I agree with my buddy. If they were going to get beat, they deserve the right to have the butt whooping instead of watching Indiana be the 4th team out of the Big Ten to go out there and did absolutely nothing this season, nothing to earn this spot. All they did was have 1 loss, and if that's the litmus test, if that's what you have to do, then Coastal Carolina has a gripe historically. The Boise State has a gripe. UCF has a gripe. Cincinnati has a gripe. If all you have to do is be 11-1, oh no, it's not be 11-1. It's be 11-1 and be in the Big Ten or the SEC. That's what it is. And the reality of it all is Indiana shouldn't have been there. And the commentators, things I've been saying for weeks, all season long, the commentators said multiple points that I've made while watching Indiana lose to Notre Dame about the Big Ten, about Indiana, about the why. Why is this team being here means what? So all I'm saying is Indiana showed me that they shouldn't have been there. Notre Dame, I agree with you. We don't know who Notre Dame is because they played a subpar team that was 11-1. When Notre Dame plays Georgia, that's when we'll get to know who Notre Dame is because, by the way, unless people want to give some credit to Army, they think that the only quality win Notre Dame had this year was Texas A&M, and that was the first week of the season. So it's been a very, 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 very long time since Notre Dame has apparently wowed people, and now they have Georgia, who I think has a massive opportunity to win another national championship.
Yeah, I mean, they definitely do, but Georgia's also going to be without Carson Beck, which is, the same argument we talked about with Tulane versus Florida. Like they're not going to have the starting quarterback.
It's a different
Now,
argument than
granted,
when it's Georgia.
that's true. Granted, when you have a team like Georgia, you usually have very good depth. I mean, if we're being technical, DJ Lagway was the third quarterback on the roster, and now he's the starter. Now,
When Graham Mertz
different
was the
story.
starter, we knew he was coming in. Yeah.
Five-star recruit, freshman. Finally gets a chance to start. That's fine, and he's proven that he's really, really good. Maybe a future number one overall pick. Who knows? That's a couple of years away, but I'm really excited to see him next year. That's for sure. But yeah, I mean, I don't. At the beginning of where you were going, I thought I was going to vehemently disagree with you, but then at the same time, you bring up the Ole Miss or the Alabama or the South Carolina argument. I mean, I would have put all three of those teams in over Indiana. I mean, that's not even a question. I mean, you talk about who the best teams in college football are, and I think that's what they're trying to get at. Who are the 12 best teams in college football, not who deserves it. And I think that was the case what they did last year by leaving Florida State out because, let's be honest, Florida State without Jordan Travis would have gotten absolutely waxed by Michigan. But
But in
again,
that case, they should have left Georgia out this year.
yeah. I mean, if that's their argument, which I think is a weird argument. Now, granted, Georgia won the conference championship, so you couldn't leave them out based on the rules.
So did Florida
but-
State last year. So if those are the same
No,
rules,
I'm talking about this year based on those rules.
right. But last year, based on the rules of being a quote unquote power conference, nobody
There
had
was,
ever
but
been.
they weren't these rules last year. It was just four teams objectively.
But
Now
they've
you
nev-
actually
they've-
have rules where
They've
five
never let out
conference
a conference
champions.
champion like that, though. And this proves my point. They never let a power conference champion out, except for when they did it to the ACC with Florida State. To my point, Georgia does not have their starting quarterback. Georgia is Florida State of last year. Georgia not only didn't get punished, they got the second seed and they got a bye. So
I'm surprised they still gave
could have
them the
given
two
them.
seed.
They could have given them the fifth.
But then again, you're not putting Boise State over them, and you're not putting Arizona State over them. Right. So they kind of automatically got the 2 seed.
Right. But what I'm
because
saying is
Boise State
their
is
rule.
not better than Georgia.
I don't
and
disagree.
Neither
with
is
where
Arizona
Georgia
State.
Is. I don't disagree where Georgia is at all. I disagree with the committee because and I'm telling you right now, if I called up the ACC office and I had a conversation about Georgia being a 2, getting a first round bye, not having the quarterback, they would say Georgia shouldn't even be in it because it's the Jordan Travis rule. See, once you set a precedent, you are going to have everything up against that precedent until you explain yourself or until you change.
Yeah. And then everything else is just objective. I don't know why it's so difficult. Now, granted, you see blowouts all the time in the college football playoff, in the NFL. Think about the Bills Dolphins a couple of years ago. I think the Bills beat them by 30 in the first round of the playoffs. Granted, without their starting quarterback, but that is always going to be the problem when you've got all these teams, 100 how many, help me out here?
134.
134 teams that you've got to choose from to decide who gets in. You're not even necessarily going based off of record. It's objective. They put in whoever they want. When you have that many teams, it's impossible for everybody to play everybody. It's impossible to because if you went simply straight by record, hang on. If you simply went based off of record, obviously Clemson would get in because of winning the conference championship. You would have had Army in.
Yeah.
Was there any other one-loss team in college football that isn't in?
I don't think so.
I don't think so.
And that's the argument.
So you would have had Army in, and you would have probably knocked out. If you would have put Army in, you probably knock out SMU. I mean,
They wouldn't have taken
that's
out
about
SMU.
it.
Just take out Indiana and put in Army.
No, I'm saying if you're going purely based on record, Indiana would have to be in because they were 11-1. Then you would knock out SMU because they were the next lowest team that did not have one loss or win a conference championship. So SMU would have been the team out. Clemson would have been the 12. Army would have probably been the 11. Gotten waxed by Notre Dame again, but
They would have played somebody
that's if
else.
you were going purely based on record, by no other factors other than record. Because Army would have been in, SMU would have been out in that case. But we don't. But we can't do that because, like we said, would Army have gotten blown out? Assuming the Army would have gotten in as the 12 seed, would Army have gotten blown out by Texas? Yeah, probably. But if you're going based on record, they would have deserved to be in. They would have deserved the right to get blown out by Texas at Texas. SMU got in on their merits this year. They got blown out by Penn State, but they deserved to get blown out by Penn State. Not because they threw two pick sixes and did not play well, but because they went 11-2 in the ACC, or took the ACC championship game right down to the wire, lost to Clemson, who I would argue is a good 3-loss team, and get blown out by Penn State. Penn State's a good team. You can't, you can't get on SMU for getting blown out by Penn State. First year in the ACC after all those years in the American, and they make the college football playoff. That is a massive accomplishment for SMU. Massive. Do I think they can repeat this every year? That remains to be seen. But when you get to go into an atmosphere like that, you can't blame SMU for having trouble playing at Beaver Stadium. That is one of the toughest, if not the toughest places to play in all of college football. And not only is it the toughest place to play, they did a whiteout for the game. And you got to see this, and when we get to this game, I want to hear your thoughts on it. The whiteout atmosphere. Now, I've never been to it, but I've seen it on TV. I want to go to it. I think next year I'm going to try to go because now with my new work schedule, I could probably make it work. I am really curious to see how other teams can play in that atmosphere, and just seeing how SMU did. If you're a good, not great team, which I think is what SMU was, good team, maybe not a great team, that atmosphere is going to mess you up.
Yeah.
So I think if you look at what their quarterback did, it's probably more so down to the pressure of playing in Happy Valley. But we'll get to that game later, because I do want to hear what your thoughts on the atmosphere was like. But regardless, if you're going based purely on record, yes, Army would have been in, SMU would have been out. But you're trying to put the 12 best teams in college football. Now, they had to draw a line somewhere with record. Now, could you have put another 2-loss team in? BYU had 2 losses. BYU is out of the Big 12, was pretty much leading the Big 12 all year. Their only loss, actually, they didn't lose to anybody until they lost to a shocker to Kansas, and then lost to Arizona State, which was very surprising. But I mean, that's a team maybe you could have considered as a 2-loss team. Miami was a 2-loss team you could have considered. Miami's a 2-loss team they would have considered. That's maybe, I mean, if you were going to leave Indiana out, I think Miami would have been the team to go in. Because not that Miami really had a real quality win. I mean, they beat some decent teams, but they didn't have like a true quality win. That's the team I would have put in over Indiana if you wanted to keep the 3-loss teams out. Because you look at who they played all year, and Miami out of the ACC is always a tricky one. Now, I think their loss to Syracuse basically killed it for them. I do give Syracuse a lot of credit for beating them in that game, but I also think Syracuse is a team that, deserved more credit than they got all year. Because Kyle McCord led the nation in passing. I
Still
think he
does.
was fourth in touchdowns or something like that as a transfer from Ohio State. Do they have anyone coming in for next year as a
Yeah.
transfer?
Yep.
Who is it?
Ricky Collins Jr. from LSU.
Okay, so he was Nussmeyer or Nuss, I don't know how, whatever his name is,
Yeah.
his backup.
Yeah, he was his backup. He played in one game last season, so that was a red shirt. Played in 3 games this season, so he's got 3 years of eligibility, and he is 100% passing. Over 2 years, he's 7 of 7, so that's a good thing. But yeah, Ricky Collins Jr. coming into Syracuse with three
All
years to
right.
play.
I mean, hey, coming from LSU, that's a good school, right? I mean, whether you play or not, you're coming from a program like that, you're gonna have a chance to play. Maybe if they bring somebody else in to compete with them, I think that'd probably be a good thing for them. Um, as far as the program's concerned, I don't know what Fran's plan is for that. Um, but as far as Miami goes, that would have probably been, even with the loss to Syracuse, that probably would have been the team I would have put in over Indiana if you're leaving out the 3 loss teams. I wouldn't have put Army in over Indiana. Simply because if you look at Army and you look at Miami and who they played, Miami definitely played a better schedule. And that's not even a question.
They played a
We
lot
don't have to
on.
debate
Well,
about
they
that.
played a couple ranked, but Miami's schedule was very
They played
underwhelming.
multiple teams that at different points
Okay,
this year were ranked.
it was
They weren't
underwhelming.
ranked when they played them, but
Miami was ranked way too high by the committee. They were
I
ranked
do
above
agree with
SM.
that.
They were ranked above SMU almost every single one of the college football playoff rankings each week. Miami was above them. And Miami lost to an unranked Georgia Tech and stayed in the top 10 and were still above SMU at that point. So I was like, see, that's when I
Hmm.
tell people about narratives. When they're 2 pegs lower than SMU in the same conference, because we look at college football playoff rankings, these would be any teams from any conference. You got 2 teams from the same conference and you got one above the other, but they're 2 below that in that conference. Like in the case of
Hmm.
Miami and SMU, it was easy to look at. You put Ohio State up against Miami, and you're like, okay, well, they have this, and this has that, and they have unranked, so what about this unranked? But in the case of Miami and SMU, they're in the same conference. Miami was ranked higher than them in the college football playoff numerous times. Even though SMU was better than Miami, was undefeated in the regular season in the conference, and then when Miami lost to an unranked team, they were still above them. So in that sense, when I tell people, when I say on the show all the time here on Wake Up Call, that there are narratives and there are things created to happen. There are teams that are put in places where no matter what they do, the committee's not going to let them in. And there's teams that no matter how much they fall, the committee's going to try to not let them out. If Miami had beaten Syracuse, Miami was going to go in.
It would have been
No
in.
matter what SMU and Clemson did, Miami would have been in because the committee had proven to you in that they had put Miami in the top 10 and they kept saying this is a top 10 team, this is a top 10 team, this is a top 10 team. And they wanted to put Miami in. Miami pulled themselves out, but the committee wanted to put them in. In my opinion,
Oh, of
I'm not
course.
in that room, but I'm saying this is what I mean when I say narrative. Look at the writing on the wall. When they got that team up there in the top 10 and they've done nothing to earn being that high, number 6, if they didn't lose those last few weeks, they're locked in. Even if they had made it to the ECC championship and lost, they probably would have tried to find a way to argue, and they would have put Miami above SMU because that's where they had them. Even if SMU beat Miami, they'd be like, oh, but Miami had a bad day. Because certain teams are set. Think about this. Penn State lost head-to-head to Ohio State, and Penn State had the 6th seed, and Ohio State had the 8th seed. Now, granted,
Penn State had 1 loss,
I,
Ohio State had 2.
but when you look at it and you say, no, Penn State had,
Nope, Penn State.
were they
Well,
11-1?
technically, yeah, they did because they
Yeah.
lost to
They lost in the conference
Oregon.
championship. Yeah. So
Yeah,
so the thing is, I looked at
I
that
don't
and I
know.
said, okay, Big Ten, where's the gripe on that? that Penn State lost to Ohio State, and Penn State ended up with a better seed than Ohio State head to head.
And
So
arguably the easiest path to the semifinal.
yeah, because Ohio State's got to go and play Oregon. And by the way, what did Oregon do to deserve this? They're the number one seed, and you're pitting them against their own conference. Well, it's hard to not pit the Big Ten against the Big Ten when you let so many of them in. But you have the Big Ten going up against itself in this round. If I'm Oregon, I'm the number one seed. The number one seed in the NCAA tournament typically is supposed to have the easiest road there, especially the number one overall seed because they have 4 number ones in the bracket. But in Oregon's case, Oregon as the number one seed should have the easiest path to the championship because that's what we typically see, right? You're number one. Okay, we're gonna give you the best path to get there. Oregon's path is literally littered with potential pain and suffering. They have to play Ohio State. If they beat Ohio State, they have to play the winner of Georgia and Notre Dame. Like, why?
No, they don't. They'd have to play Texas, Arizona State.
Oh wait, they do play Texas, Arizona State because that's in the.
Well, they might
Cotton
have to play the winner of Georgia Notre Dame in the
Yeah,
championship.
it's in the Cotton Bowl. That's right. I keep
Yeah.
thinking Oregon's lower on, or not low, but in the bracket. So they play, because Oregon and Texas is what I have prognosticated could happen. So yeah, so if you beat Ohio State, you probably are playing Texas.
Yeah, that's not easy either.
And then if you beat them, you're playing Boise State or Penn State or
Georgia.
or Notre Dame. So like if I'm Oregon, for argument's sake, I have to play Ohio State, Texas, Georgia to win a national championship.
That's why I said, like, with Penn State, I asked my buddy Jake, who's a Penn State fan, and, I kind of begged the question, like, with Penn State against Oregon in the Big Ten championship, like, was it in their best interest to lose? And so far, I say yeah. Because they had SMU, who was probably didn't deserve to be on the same field as them. They're going to play Boise State, and realistically, if they don't even have to keep Genty under 100 yards. If they can just keep him under 150 and maybe only one touchdown, they're going to win the game. And then they have to play Georgia or Notre Dame. And if Georgia's still without Carson Beck, they might get to the championship game with the easiest path of anybody ever. And that's with 2 losses. Being the Big Ten runner-up. They will have had to beat SMU, Boise State, and then the winner of Notre Dame and Georgia. Notre Dame, I think they could beat. Georgia with Carson Beck, I don't think so. Without Carson Beck, it's a game. So it would be interesting. But hey, I mean, obviously, I'll be rooting for Penn State. I got to support the home state team. They're not my number one favorite team, but they are definitely the second team that I root for in college football. We all have that second team. Yeah. Obviously, for you, it's your hometown Syracuse Orange, and whoever your second team is. I would assume probably one of the teams that you cover would be my guess. To who like you kind of root for second, or if you just say, hey, I'll just root for the entire American or something like that, which is fine. But we all have that, right? Everybody knows I'm a Florida Gator fan, but I'm also, I root for Penn State.
Yeah.
It's like in football. I'm a Jets fan, but I also root for the Giants. Jets-Giants really isn't a rivalry. Florida-Penn State is not a rivalry. I don't think they've played each other in 30 years. But I'd love to see it if it ever actually happens. Whether they play at Happy Valley or Penn State or whatever. Or at the Swamp, wherever it ends up being. But yeah, Penn State's just got such an easy path. And you could hate me for saying that I think Boise State's going to be an easy game for them, but I think it is. I mean, yeah, they put up a good fight against Oregon. But Penn State knows full well, all they got to do is contain Genty. If they contain Genty somewhat, they don't even have to, like I said, They don't have to contain them completely. 150 yards and a touchdown, if they hold them to that, they will probably win the game by double digits, would be my guess. And then they get to play the winner of Notre Dame and Georgia. That'll be fun. I'm hoping it happens. I really am. But it was definitely, I know Penn State fans didn't want to admit it, but it was in their best interest to lose the Big Ten championship game. And look where they are now. And they're probably going to beat Boise State next week.
Well, I mean, when we look at these games and we look at the head-to-heads, Penn State and Boise State, who will face off against each other in the Verbo Fiesta Bowl, they both played Oregon, the only undefeated team still in the nation. I do think Oregon is ripe for a loss. I would love to see Oregon make it to the championship game. I really would, because
I wouldn't be shocked if they lose to Texas, to be quite honest with you.
well, and honestly, Oregon, Texas, for many, many weeks this season, I had them as 1-2 in the country. If that game happens at the Goodyear Cotton Bowl Classic,
Or Ohio State.
which I'm hoping and praying that I have the opportunity to go there for that, if that game happens, I'm going to get to see, and the world's going to get to see, two of the best teams, and arguably for a portion of this season, the two best teams in the country will actually be in each other's way to get to the national championship with Oregon and Texas, which would be great to see. Oregon is the common opponent of Boise State and Penn State. Boise State played Oregon on the road and lost 37-34. Penn State played Oregon in the Big Ten Championship and lost by 8. Boise State lost by 3. Both of them were games where you had to score at least 34 points. Well, more than 34 points to make.
You got to score a lot of points to beat Oregon. Oregon's defense is not something to sleep on. I mean, Genty had 192 yards and 3 touchdowns in that game. But Boise State could not move the ball through the air. You know, their quarterback threw the ball 40 times. He was 17 for 40 with 1 touchdown. That is not good. So it was basically they just fed Genty. I think at the beginning of the season, teams didn't really know how good Ashton Genty was. So Oregon being able to hold off Boise State and hold off Genty even with his almost 200 yards and 3 touchdowns, I think is a credit to their defense. But I think teams now know how to prepare for him. Because Boise State is not a great passing team. They are what the Baltimore Ravens have been. Or not the Baltimore Ravens. What the Tennessee Titans were with Derrick Henry. Feed him the rock. Feed him the rock. Feed him the rock. Every time. And he just goes and runs for however many yards and 2 or 3 touchdowns just about every game. It's the reason why he's going to probably... Well, he's going to need to have a big game against Penn State or them to win in order to break Barry Sanders' rushing record, but it's going to be close. Because he could run for 200 yards on the ground. It's not impossible. He's done it multiple times this year. But that remains to be seen. But I think teams now know how to prepare for him better. And Penn State's defense is very good. That's the one advantage I think Penn State has is their defense. Penn State's defense was able to, and I'm trying to remember the score of the Oregon game. I don't remember off the top of my head, and I'm going to find it right now.
45-37.
45-37. So, a lot of what Penn State did against Oregon, and you got to give Oregon credit. They are just a really, really good football team. It is hard for me to see them losing to anybody, let alone Ohio State or Texas. But I think if there's any two teams that could beat them, it is those two teams, Ohio State or Texas. If they get past those two, they're not losing. I don't care who they play in the national championship. They're not losing. But it would be definitely tough for them. Drew Aller threw a couple of picks in that game. Dylan Gabriel had four touchdown passes, doing what he does. So it, the Oregon thing, you got to pretty much, you can almost chalk it up as a wash because both of those teams played good games against Oregon. It's not like either one of them got blown out. You know, Boise State lost by 3, Penn State lost by 8, 6, 8,
8.
8. So I mean, it's not like they got blown out, right? I mean, Drew Aller threw 2 picks and Penn State got right back in the game. That was a good football game, and so was the Boise State game against Oregon. But I think that will definitely be a much better game than SMU. I will tell you that right now. I think Boise State is far and away a better team than SMU, and it's not close. I think if Penn State or if Boise State would have played SMU, the same thing probably would have happened. They probably get trounced on the Smurf turf. So
I don't agree with that.
that is the one thing that stunk about Boise State not being that fifth team in, not having like a home game.
No.
We didn't get to see a college football playoff game on the Smurf turf.
Which I hope we will at some point.
I really hope we do.
But they should.
And
they
if
should
anybody that knows me knows this, I think the Smurf turf is the best field in college football. It's not the best stadium, but it's the best field in college football.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't understand why more teams don't do that.
It messes with your mind. I think if Syracuse went and an all orange field at home in the Dome with orange jerseys on, people would not be able to see what's happening, which is the whole point. I think it creates a competitive advantage. Just like Oregon, when they have their court with all the trees on it, that would totally mess with your eyes. It just messes with your eyes when you're playing them. But let's get into Ashton Jeanty for a second here. These are his numbers. I'm going to run from game 1 all the way through. These are his numbers.
These are crazy, folks.
I'm going to give you yards, average yard per carry, touchdowns. These are per game. These are each game. I'm going to start with Georgia Southern. First game. 267, 13.4, 6 touchdowns. 192, 7.7, 3 touchdowns. 127, and by the way, the 192 and 3 touchdowns, like you mentioned, was the Oregon game. 127, 11.5 yards a carry, no touchdowns. 259, 10 yards a carry, 4 touchdowns. 186, 14.3 yards a carry. This looks like yards per catch, by the way. Yards a carry, 14.3, 3 touchdowns against Utah State. Then we had 217, 7 yards a carry, 1 touchdown. 128, 3.9 yards a carry against UNLV on the road the first time they played them. That was they had a touchdown on that one. 148, 4.8, 2 touchdowns. 209, 6.1, 3 touchdowns. 159, 5.0, 3 touchdowns. 169, 8.9, 1 touchdown. 226, 6.1, 1 touchdown. And in the championship game against UNLV, 21-7, 209 and a backflip, 6.5 yards a carry, and a touchdown. There was a time this season through multiple games where this man, Ashton Jeanty, who hails from Jacksonville, Florida, was averaging 9.9 yards a carry through multiple games, which means that this dude was averaging just about a first down every time he touched the ball. This season, currently, 2,497 yards on 344 carries, 7.3 yards a carry, 29 rushing touchdowns, the same amount of rushing touchdowns as Bryson Daly, the starting quarterback for Army. Looking at Ashton Jeanty, these numbers, the 2,500-yard club, some people get that in 4 years. Not a lot of people get that in 4 years. 344 carries, some people don't even get half of that in the NFL in their entire career. So this man in a season has had a career. I hope he breaks Barry Sanders' record. I love Barry Sanders. And
he's got to run for over 200 to do that, I think, right?
Does. But this guy is incredible. He is great. I want to get to the rest of the games here so that we can make sure we don't miss a beat here. The next one we're going to talk about is going to be Clemson at Texas. I'm going to save Penn State for the end because I got a lot to say about it. But we're going to jump to a fast break here. By the way, folks, and as I've said to you before, it's like a disclaimer on the show. Nothing against the Big Ten. Nothing against Big Ten teams. Nothing against Notre Dame. All I ask is for fairness in decision making, actually looking at what's going on, not making excuses for one and not the other, not providing quality losses and then not granting quality wins, and saying you played somebody and almost beat them isn't the same as beating them. All of those things said, Ohio State and Penn State, as I've said on the show 1,000,000,001 times, I want there to be fairness. I want it to reflect what I think is, if you got a rule, then you need to have that rule for everybody. You need to carry it out. Nobody wants to have a parent where if 3 kids show up drunk on the porch, one of them gets punished and the other 2 can go upstairs and play video games. Big Ten gets to go play video games. Other conferences have to get punished. That is all I've ever said. But I've also said that if you get into the game and you play the game and you impress me within that game, I'm going to give you your flowers. I want fairness by conference. Well, let me rephrase. I want fairness in things that are stated. You can't say, well, this team won all these games and did this, this, and this against unranked teams, and this team did the same thing, but this team's bad and this team's good. In the case of Ohio State and Penn State, they do get an unfair advantage in the rankings. It does start at the beginning of the season. But I've also made a clear statement that apparently I need to make again. When they play the actual game, if they win and they handle their business, I will respect them. Penn State and Ohio State have proven to me
both of those teams did that this
deserve
weekend.
to be there. They deserve to be there. Penn State and Ohio State proved to me this week that they absolutely should be in the college football playoff this year, should be playing and have a great opportunity for both of them to move on. Indiana showed me that they had no business being there, which is what I thought, but I never told you Ohio State shouldn't be in. And I never said that Penn State shouldn't be in. I've made comments about the Big Ten's unfair advantage, which is something that you've heard other people talk about as well, people I respect in the business. Mm-hmm. And Notre Dame having an unfair advantage because the last 2 times they made the college football playoff, the only other 2 times they got bounced. And those years were those years of where they're dancing with 11-1, 12-0, same as this year. Notre Dame beat a team that wasn't that good. They beat a team that was smoke and mirrors record-wise at 11-1.
We could agree on that right. For sure.
So they did that, okay? And that was the one thing that I knew, is that Notre Dame was either going to prove that they shouldn't be in or Indiana was going to prove that they shouldn't be in. But in the case of, and then people say, well, Dan, everybody that lost shouldn't be in. No, I'm not saying that. Clemson would have never been in if they didn't win the ACC title game because they weren't going to let a 3-loss team in. And then,
I think they would have if Clemson would have lost.
Yeah, Clemson.
Because if SMU won the ACC, Arizona State probably would have been the 12 seed. SMU, you could debate either 3 or 4, probably 4. Well, no, it probably would have been 3.
It would have been 3.
And then you probably are putting in one of those 3 loss teams, unless they decided to put Miami in because they still didn't want to put in a 3-loss team.
Yeah, well,
which if that was the case,
this year,
Miami, let's say Miami was the 11 seed and had to play Penn State, that at least would have been a competitive game.
It would have been an interesting game. I mean, Penn State.
I still think Penn State would have won, but it would have been a competitive game.
Well, it depends on how much offense Penn State was going to be willing to score against Miami's offense. But Miami.
But think about this, though, for a second. Miami coming to Happy Valley in a whiteout when it was 15 degrees outside.
Well, but Miami also
it was cold.
Miami also smoke and mirrors. They're another team that was smoke and mirrors. They were blowing teams out that weren't that good this year. So, and Miami had to come all the way back on the road at
Are you trying to tell me Florida's not that good?
Listen, they blew out a lot of teams this year.
Florida was also a much different team in week 1 than they are now.
A lot of unranked teams. They had to come back against Cal on the road at Cal to win by a point, 39-38. Keep in mind that also in the Virginia Tech game, that touchdown in the end zone was ruled not a touchdown. That would have been another loss for Miami. So Miami played a lot of games down the stretch that made you say to yourself, this team has proven nothing that they should be in. the college football playoff if they don't win the ACC championship, which they didn't. And by the way, and to this day and forever, I will not understand this, and this is no offense to Cam Ward. I would say this about any quarterback in this situation. Kyle McCord beat Cam Ward head to head. Kyle McCord has more yards head to head than Cam Ward. Kyle McCord was 10th in Heisman finish. Cam Ward was 4th. But statistically and head to head, Kyle McCord was better than Cam Ward. So if you're better than him by the numbers and you're better than him head to head and you kept him out of the college football playoff, why is Cam Ward keeping Kyle McCord out of New York City for the Heisman final voting? Neither one of them was going to get it, but they should have.
It was for the same reason that Travis Hunter won the award. It was a straight up popularity contest. Travis Hunter, and we talked about this last week, so I'm not gonna go on about this for very long. Travis Hunter had a decent year for a corner and a slightly above average year for a wide receiver. Ashton Genty had a historic season as a running back.
Yeah.
No one has put up those types of numbers since Derrick Henry. These were way better numbers than Reggie Bush had in his Heisman year. And Reggie Bush won that Heisman decisively. That is how you know it's a popularity contest. I was shocked at the fact that Kyle McCord got Heisman votes and finished in the top 10, and I'm happy that he did because he deserved it. He deserved to be higher, but, again, popularity contest, it's not going to get the votes. That's just the way it is. They don't respect Syracuse.
And why is it? Narratives. And who are they talking about at the beginning of the season? Cam Ward. Who weren't they talking about? Kyle McCord. Narratives. It's all about narratives.
Do you know why they
literally tell you at the beginning of the season about that stuff?
You know why they weren't talking about Kyle McCord? Because he basically got ran out of at Ohio State. He got run out of there after they got blown out by Michigan in the last game of the year. So he enters the transfer portal. He goes to the much quieter situation of Syracuse. And he balls out. Kyle McCord is going to get drafted this year. It's probably either going to be... I would think he's probably maybe a third-round pick, would be my guess. And I hope I'd love to see him go to a team maybe like Seattle, that he can sit behind Geno for a year and figure things out. Whether he gets a chance to start or not is up for debate.
Yeah.
But I think Seattle could make a lot of sense for him. A small market, the fans are awesome. They love their players. I'm trying to think of where else he can maybe go that would make sense. Don't want to go anywhere near Cleveland. No chance there.
There's a few teams that need him, but one of the Cleveland is one of those teams. But
Kyle, I hope to God you don't.
Well, it's the same thing that why I said Marvin Harrison should not want to go to Arizona. But Kyle would make sense if he went to the Jets. It would make sense if he went.
Jets would make sense.
Jets would make sense.
I'd love him.
The Browns would make sense.
I'd love him, but I don't see it.
Yeah, the Steelers would make sense for him to go there, as they don't really necessarily have a long-term plan. Seattle would make sense. New Orleans has Rattler and Hayner, so they're going to have to figure that out, so I wouldn't put him there. Carolina could be a landing place.
I still would. Him. I think New Orleans still makes sense because I don't think either one of those guys are any good.
But they just drafted Rattler, so he's probably going to get some more time. The Giants would make sense, but they're going to draft earlier, and Vegas would make sense, but they're going to draft earlier.
Yeah. So there's a few teams that make sense for him. I think the best fit is probably Pittsburgh. Because they're going to bring back either Fields or Russ. If they bring back Russ, then it really is a perfect fit, because he can come in, he could be the backup or be the third string guy, learn from Russ, because Russ is a consummate pro who, even though he was horrendous in Denver, has been really good for the Steelers this year. He hasn't been, Russ like the good old days in Seattle, but he's still been very good. There's a reason why the Pittsburgh Steelers have 10 wins, and it's because of him. It's big part because of him. And Justin Fields did a great job holding down the fort till he came back, and then he came in, and Russ has been great ever since. That would make a lot of sense. I also thought that prior to him saying he was going to stay for his 5th year, that Drew Aller made a lot of sense for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I still think that if Drew Aller goes back to Penn State and has a great year, he will be a first round pick next year. He would have probably been around the same as Kyle McCord this year. Maybe Kyle goes a little bit higher. Maybe Drew would have been maybe a early day 3 pick. Um, but I think Drew Aller, I've been saying all year, the two most underrated quarterbacks in this year's draft were going to be Kyle McCord and Drew Aller. Drew Aller obviously took himself out of the draft because he's going to go back to Penn State for another year. So that remains to be seen how he'll do. But I'd love to see him go out and ball out and earn an opportunity to be a first round pick next year. I think he could very well could be. But Kyle's probably going to be in that round 2, round 3, probably more like round 3. But Pittsburgh makes a lot of sense. Seattle makes a lot of sense. The Jets make a lot of sense if they don't take a quarterback. Um, I think it would behoove any team that takes Cam Ward or Shadur Sanders to take another quarterback. So maybe the Giants take them both.
Giants need.
I know Giants fans wouldn't like it, but
they need.
Hey, this way you got defense. 2 chances to hit the jackpot.
Right. I don't disagree with you, but the Giants need a lot of help. And
so the year Aaron Rodgers was drafted by the Packers, the Niners, when they took Alex Smith number 1, they seriously considered taking Rodgers 1-1, but when Rodgers kept falling, there were talks in their draft room about taking them both if he made it to the first pick of the second round. Man, would that have been interesting if Rodgers got past Green Bay and then went to the Niners and beat out Alex Smith for the job. Now, who knows if he would have beat out Alex Smith?
Okay,
Alex Smith
was the darling back then.
We may not have ever heard. We may have never heard of Aaron Rodgers at that point.
Well, we would eventually, just like Brett Favre getting drafted by Atlanta, and people forgetting.
You mean Brett Favre got drafted by Atlanta?
Drafted by Hotlanta. So we're gonna take
and they couldn't even pronounce his name correctly.
No, Brett Favre. Yes, the Favre.
Brett Favre.
So we will take a step aside for a fast break. When we come back, we're gonna get into more. We'll go Clemson at Texas. We also have to talk with you about Tennessee at Ohio State. And if Ohio State had never impressed me before, which they have, but if they had never impressed me before, they absolutely impressed me in their trouncing of an SEC team in Ohio State. We will talk in Tennessee. We will talk about that right after this fast break on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora. Plenty more to come. What'd he say, Chuck? Chuck said, this is what Chuck said. Chuck's on the feed here right now. He said, New Orleans still has a team? LOL, didn't hear from them all season. Chuck, man, come on now. The city of New Orleans, don't disrespect. Let me tell you something about New Orleans, Louisiana. I love New Orleans. Let me tell you something about the Saints. They definitely are reeling right now. They need some direction. They need some leadership. And they might blow things up after this season. We'll see what's going to happen here as we step forward. They got a couple young quarterbacks in Hainer and Rattler. We'll see how it goes. We will take a step aside, man. Chuck just gave it right to him today. Right before Christmas, Chuck, man. Come on now. We'll take a step aside for a fast break. We'll be back right after this. Here's a message from Renee from Bryan's Landing, located on 6523 East Seneca Turnpike in Jamesville, New York. Open Tuesdays and Wednesdays for dinner, Thursday through Saturday for lunch and dinner, and Sundays for brunch.
It's a lot like the way that my mom and dad ran their restaurant. We have put in place a lot of people that are family to us, very similar to how my dad hired people that were family to him. And then the tradition I'm carrying on is a lot of the items that are on our menu are my dad's. And he taught our chefs how to recreate his dishes. So I think that Tommy McInerney, who our executive chef is, to him it is an art. And I think that when he does create a dish, it's not just about making the food taste delicious, which is definitely our priority, but it's an art to him, and it's almost like his canvas on a plate where he just wants the colors to look great, and people love it because he takes pride in that. And Bryan and I appreciate that. We want it to obviously look good and taste good. I will tell you, when we opened up, it was 6 weeks before COVID. And what was amazing was the community, our friends and family stepped up, and everybody did takeout. Everybody supported us. Our hearts were just so filled. So to Brian and I, obviously our friends come all the time, and we just have repeat customers in Jamesville, and I think people going to our previous restaurant in Green Lakes are making the trip to come to Brian's Landing to support us. And I mean, I think we have great food and a great atmosphere. So it's very, very important to us.
Head to Brian's Landing, located on 6523 East Seneca Turnpike in Jamesville, New York, where memories have become recipes that are now meals to share with you. Tuesdays and Wednesdays for dinner, Thursday through Saturday for lunch and dinner, and on Sundays for brunch. And be sure to come out for live music Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Here is a special message from Brian Bruno, owner of Servomation Refreshments Incorporated.
I grew up in the family business, had the experience of working for a national food service company with thousands of employees, and as much as I enjoyed the experience I had, there's something about, owning my own company and being able to change the things I saw wrong with the industry firsthand, which is why I moved back to my hometown in Canastota, New York to launch Servomation. It was back in 2007. When we first started the business in 2007, really you didn't find any machines with credit card readers. There was a lack of variety in machines. You got stuck with basically whatever the vending company wanted to sell that day. There was a lot of inefficiencies in the business, and those were all things that we saw as opportunities, both from a customer level to improve and from an operating level to be more efficient. We've really been at the forefront of introducing retail technology into our space. We were doing self-checkout back in 2009 before it really became a national phenomenon. The whole point of it isn't to just improve the customer experience. It's to make it feel more like a retail environment where people don't have to be afraid of what they're buying behind glass. They don't have to be afraid of not being able to see the ingredients of the packages. It was an easy transaction from that standpoint. If we were to reinvent something, we wanted to make sure what we were making looked and felt more like a deli and not like something that you would traditionally see in a vending machine. I was tired of hearing for years the customers say the wheel of death because the vending machine would circle around with the same tuna salad in it. What we wanted to do was it really change the perception of that food. So allowing customers to touch it, allowing customers to feel the weight of it, allowing customers to see the freshness of it, and also the variety of it really helps them change the perception and ultimately the value of what we bring to them. The point of differentiation you have to make is either in value or the quality. And I think on both of those fronts, Servomation has really, in large part, changed that value system for employees. So they no longer have to worry about bringing their food from home or having to leave their desk during the day and rush out to get back in time for their break to end. We're bringing something that they can count on in their break room every day, and they know it's going to be there, they know it's going to be fresh, and they don't have to worry about it being sold out or something that they don't enjoy. We've also heavily invested in flavored water machines, so you can get a glass of water with a fresh piece of fruit in it, along with bean to cup coffee machines. So there's not a day that goes by we're not surprised when we get customers that call us and say, we didn't know you could do all this. We're really lucky to have a strong group of dedicated employees. Most of our employees have been with us since inception. They're family to us, and people like doing business with people they like and trust. And I think the same thing goes for employees. In a day and an age where there's a lot of corporations that just look at an employee as a number and don't get to know them, that's just not the way I was raised or how I like to do business. So we're a little old-fashioned. We like getting close to our employees. We like knowing how we can help them. We like knowing how we can improve their lives, adjust their schedules, whatever it may be to help improve their quality of life. And we think in the end that makes for a happier employee. We're fortunate enough to have really grown over the last several years, and from Pennsylvania to Massachusetts to Connecticut, we really do have a strong connection, even though we're not in the rooms every day with these employees. There's not one single employee that we feel like we don't know, and certainly we know they can call us at any time, and they're definitely treated as family to us. I wake up every single day really excited to surprise our customers in a good way. The one thing I can tell you is I think that every one of our employees and every one of our customers will continue to be at the forefront of every decision we make.
Find out how Servomation can help you and your business by going to servomation.com. In these unique times, there are those in our community that give us a sense of normalcy and positivity. Pizza Man on 50 Oswego Street in Baldwinsville has been here for you for over 35 years and is here now. Call 315-638-1234 or order online at pizzamanbville.com to bring those familiar tastes into your home. And remember to come see our monthly on-site broadcasts centered around the community and our Baldwinsville beats. Pizza Man in Baldwinsville. Any way you slice it, they are always here for you. Looking for your next ride? Look no further than Great Lakes Honda City, located on 7140 Henry Clay Boulevard in Liverpool, New York. Serving our community for decades, their new and pre-owned vast array of vehicles are available to you Monday through Saturday on site. To search from home, shop at GreatLakesHondaCity.com. Call 315-365-5576 to set up an appointment. That's 315-365-5576 for Great Lakes Honda City, 7140 Henry Clay Boulevard in Liverpool, New York. Great cars, great people, Great Lakes.
All right, you need to come out here and get yourself the Brooklyn Pickle. I was talking about this with one of my buddies. I was like, yo, there's no better sandwich in the state of New York than the Brooklyn Pickle. And now that I found out that they're going down to North Carolina, we are taking over your taste buds everywhere you are, wherever you're gonna be. You need to get yourself out to the Brooklyn Pickle. Pinehurst, you just realized that you found yourself the best sandwich shop that you're ever gonna have. This is a glorious moment. It's a blessing to your community. You're welcome. Brooklyn in the house, baby. Go over to the Brooklyn Pickle. You already know what it is.
You heard the man. Head to Brooklyn Pickle Pinehurst on 1788 Old Morgantown Road in Southern Pines, North Carolina. And welcome back here to Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora, where sports truly meets that thing called life. We are here picture in picture with Murph, as we are here for DT and Murphy to start off your week on Wake Up Call. It is Christmas week, and we say Merry Christmas on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora because that's December 25th. It's Jesus' birthday. If you wish me a happy Kwanzaa or a happy Hanukkah, I will wish it right back to you. And if I wish you a Merry Christmas, I hope you send it back as well. I hope you're all having a wonderful, wonderful morning here in Christmas week. We are talking college football playoff. And Clemson, Texas is up next. Clemson at Texas in this historic expansion of the college football playoff to 12 and the historic first round, which has never been a part of the college football playoff, a first round or a quarterfinal before this season. Only semifinal and final have been, because there's only been 4 teams in this decade of the college football playoff. Now, Clemson at Texas. Clemson scored first on a passing touchdown. Then Golden's catch for Texas early on in the game was insane. That catch, and then Texas getting to Cade Klubnik multiple times here. Then R.J. Mickens, who I interviewed going into the season, he had a pick 6, made it 21-14, but a flag would take that play back, so it would have been a one-possession game. Instead, they settle for a field goal. Clemson is down 21-10. And that being the score there, I believe, at halftime. And then Texas running back Wisner, he had himself a day doing a lot of great things in this game. And then Green got a pass from Klubnik, 31-17, got them within 2 touchdowns of the Longhorns. And then Klubnik to TJ Moore made it 31-24, made it a game here late, but Texas responded on a 77-yard touchdown, and that made it 38-24 for Texas. And we look at Clemson had a player wide open in the field multiple times in this game. I want to get back to that in a second. And then Michael Taff, his hit on Clemson and a potential catch that they were going to try and get for a first down and keep this drive going. I think it was 1:20 left in the game. Clemson's trying to keep their drive alive. Taff gets to the receiver. The receiver doesn't catch it. He puts a big hit on the receiver, and the game ends on a couple kneel downs. That play by Taff is what was the silencer and truly put a button on this game for the Texas Longhorns. Clemson gave them a fight, much more of a fight than I think some people give them credit for.
And the one thing that I really want to look to is Texas steps forward. As I said, to me, for most of the season, I consider them one of the best teams in the country. The defense for Texas has to step it up because Clemson had multiple times, throughout the game, where Cade Klubnik found a wide open receiver with so much spacing. So Texas moving forward, I'll be interested to see how their defense adjusts because Clemson gave them a fight, made it a one-possession game, 31-24. They found ways to answer offensively, and Michael Taft found a way to answer defensively at the end. But a lot of wide open passes for Clemson is something I would look to for their defense. And Michael Taft, I want to give you a lot of credit and a lot of love. This man was a walk-on who became an All-American and laid a hit in this game that secured the victory and did not give Clemson an opportunity to come within one score and then try an onside kick. So shout out to Michael Taft, and I will echo the sentiments of other coaches, including James Franklin, who said it when I was at Penn State in the press conference with him there over the weekend. Because of the new 105 rule, instead of having 85 scholarships, now teams can have over 100 in the FBS. It may eradicate the world of the walk-on. And so the stories that can be told about walk-ons doing what they've done may not get told anymore. That's something I hope college football addresses. The NCAA has done a lot of things wrong. One of the things they can do right is protect the walk-on. And if they wonder how important that is, Penn State, they know what it's like to have a walk-on over this weekend to create and disrupt and to create havoc and make disruption. Clemson did the same thing in this. I do not want, or pardon me, Texas did the same with Michael Taft. I don't want to see the end of a walk-on. I don't want to see the end of these incredible stories. And at the end of the season, when a coach would get the whole team together and make an announcement on which walk-ons were going to get a scholarship. Shout out to Michael Taft. May the world of the walk-on live on forever, and may it not be a part of history to simply sit in history and never have another chapter written in it again. Thoughts on Clemson, Texas? People that were watching this game were telling me, Dan, it's out of hand. Texas is blowing them out. Clemson has no chance. Clemson very much had multiple chances down the stretch here. And I would say, and I would argue, of all of the games we saw, this was the best first-round game and the closest first-round game by play, by the talent of the two teams against each other. I think Klubnik had a good game. I'm looking at both sides of this. And Cade Klubnik, I've been waiting for him to show me something. This game, he found a lot of guys in space. They did a lot of good things. Clemson gave him hell. Texas had a little bit more. But if there was any game where I could say, okay, both teams coming out of that, that was a pretty good game. Ohio State, they blew out. Penn State had a blowout. Notre Dame, the game felt like it was over early. In the case of Clemson and Texas, at least they made this a game in the second half.
They did. I mean, obviously, Clemson being down 28-10 at halftime was not easy for them. I'm sure Dabo Swinney kind of went in there and was like, listen, we may not win this game, but we don't want to go down without a fight. So they came back. They they scored points in the third quarter, scored another touchdown in the fourth quarter, got it to a one-score game, and then pretty much right after, Jaden Blue ran one in for Texas from 77 yards, and that was basically all she wrote. You got to give Clemson credit for hanging in there. Clemson this year, obviously this is not like the big bad Clemson Tigers that we used to see from, back in the days with Trevor Lawrence and Deshaun Watson and Hunter Renfrow and all those guys. But Clemson is still a quality program. So you go in there and you see what they do with Texas. And Texas is a very good team. Let's not forget that. Texas was ranked number 2 for probably 3/4 of the year.
Yeah.
They were in it in the SEC in their very first year.
Yeah.
Nobody thought Texas was going to be in it. So seeing what they did, I think it was more impressive than what I saw from Texas. However, if Quinn Ewers continues to play the way he has, I don't see Texas making a deep run. Quinn Ewers, from what we saw last year versus this year, is not the same player. End of last year, we would have thought he'd been a first-round pick this year. He is probably going to stay in school because is he the third? Would he be the third quarterback in this class? Probably. But I don't know if that means he'd be a first-round pick. I don't like him at all. I think Clemson, I think their best bet is to turn the reins over to Arch now. Because Arch has been playing, he didn't play great against Georgia, but he's had a solid first year.
Who plays great against Georgia, especially a first-year guy?
Exactly.
I know.
He's a redshirt freshman. He played, let's see. Here's the game log. So he started 2 games this year. He started against Louisiana Monroe. He played really well. Those were his only 2 interceptions he threw in that game. Mississippi State, he played great. Georgia, he didn't, do all that much, but Quinn Ewers was back by then. That kid, now, you could say nepotism all you want because he's a Manning, but he wouldn't be at Texas if he didn't deserve to be at Texas. He could have easily transferred somewhere after Quinn Ewers said he was coming back. But he remained loyal to Texas.
Yeah.
However, if Quinn Ewers stays again, then I could see him maybe entering the transfer portal and transferring to a place like Ole Miss. And honestly, if he transfers, I think Ole Miss is the only place that's going to get him. Just because of the family legacy. But I do not like Quinn Ewers. I do not like the way he's been playing. The running game's been very good. I think their running game is what led them to the win in this game. But Quinn Ewers has not looked good. I do not like their chances with Quinn Ewers at quarterback. I really don't.
Well, that's the beauty of Texas. Texas has 2 quarterbacks. Most people have not. Some have.
I'm waiting for the
one,
Jalen Hurts Tua
kind of
situation to play out with Texas.
But some have one. Some have half of one statistically. When you talk about really, really good quarterbacks that can command a game, not everybody has one. Very slim have 2. That was my whole point of Tulane not having their starting quarterback against Florida. I'm not going to ever look at that game and say, "Oh, this is a loss that shows that the SEC is better than Tulane." No, they played without their star quarterback. With their star quarterback, they get blown out. Okay, then I could say, yeah, Tulane was no match for Florida.
I still think they probably get blown out, but that's besides the point.
That's an absolute joke.
That's a conversation for another day.
That would be a joke of a comment. But the reality of it all is, if you don't have your star quarterback, which Tulane didn't, I don't even regard that as a game. It's the same thing when Memphis had the season they had and Mike Norvell took the job at Florida State after Memphis won the AAC championship in the Liberty Bowl, which I was there for. And I was part of his last interview at Memphis. When they won that game and he left and they played Penn State in a New Year's Six Bowl, I don't look back at that game and say the Big Ten's so much better than the American because of that game, because they didn't have Mike Norvell as their coach. And if you lose your head coach and your head coach is really good, in that case, Mike Norvell has been really good, very good for Memphis in those 4 years. You lose your head coach, that game to me, I'm looking at that game going, okay, if he's there, fighting chance. He's not there, it's a loss. Same thing with Tulane. I didn't even watch that game. I did not even watch. I went back and watched the highlights, but I didn't even watch the Tulane-Florida game because the moment that their star quarterback went in the transfer portal, I was like, okay, there's no way they're going to win the game. So
this is why I hate bowl season now, man.
But
everybody just opts out because they're going to the pros or goes in the transfer portal.
It's portal, man. It's when
Deion Sanders is doing it right. When he's making Travis Hunter and Shedeur Sanders play in that game. But what he's doing, every coach should be doing.
But the thing is
you want to transfer, but you better be playing in this game. You want to go to the NFL, go to the NFL.
The reality
you are playing, whether you like it or not.
The reality is you play for, if you believe in the coach, then you're going to play that game. And in the case of
you play
Syracuse,
for your teammates, not
you
play for your coach, but in that type of a game,
the coach that has somebody playing for them. Travis Hunter believed in Deion Sanders at Jackson State.
Mm-hmm.
He believed in Deion Sanders when Deion went to Colorado. He stayed with him, and he believed in it. Ashton Genty believed in Boise State when he could have entered the transfer portal. Syracuse does not have any opt-outs. How many teams across the nation of 40-plus bowl games can say that they have a team with no opt-outs? Syracuse has no opt-outs.
I think Florida had very few too.
But
if any.
That's the thing of like when you look at that, and I was talking to the offensive coordinator, Jeff Nixon, he said, we have no opt-outs. And he looked right at Fran. We were at the dart party. He looked right at Fran. He said, we have that guy to thank. That's the guy.
I'd love to meet Fran. He seems like a great guy and a great coach a great leader of men.
He's been great. He asked me to be his guest of honor at the dart party, which meant a lot to me. So I had the opportunity to go over there. I was in Binghamton, so I had to drive home in the snow, but I was able to get back and go to it. And I want to thank.
You got an all-wheel drive car. You can manage.
Yeah, I got
more than me. That's for sure.
Yeah, the weather was just not great in Binghamton, but I do appreciate Fran's gesture. I appreciate a lot of things that Fran and I have built in our bond. Looking at the schedule for Quinn Ewers here and how he's done so far. He started the season off with 3 touchdowns, 1 interception. So he was 74%. Then he was about 67%, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. Then he was 87.5%, 2-1, 69%, 1-1, 58.1% against Georgia in that loss, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. 73%, 3-2, 70.4% against Florida, 5 touchdowns, no interceptions. 62.5 at Arkansas, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. Kentucky, 64.5, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. 60.7 at Texas A&M, which was a big-time fight for Texas in that if they lost that game, they would have not played in the SEC championship game. 1-1 in that. Against Georgia in the SEC championship in overtime, 58.7, 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions. Against Clemson, 70.8, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. So he's 66.5% completion percentage this season, 26 touchdowns, 10 interceptions. My issue with Quinn Ewers is that his 2 worst completion percentage games are against Georgia. So against the best of the best in the upper echelon, he's under 59% completion percentage. Mm-hmm. That's a concern for me. That is a concern.
Even Texas A&M, literally just over 60%.
Yeah. So I mean,
he throws a lot of interceptions. For a guy that was expected to be a first-round pick at the beginning of this year, that's a lot of interceptions. Most of your best of the best college quarterbacks might have 4 or 5 interceptions over the course of the season. Maybe. So that's a lot of picks for him. I mean, he had 2 in the SEC championship game. He had 1 in the Clemson game, but I just don't.
He had 2 against Vanderbilt.
I'm just not a fan. He had 2 against Vanderbilt.
At Vanderbilt, they won by 3 points, 27-24. He threw 2 interceptions, 73% completion percentage, but 2 interceptions and a 3-point victory at Vandy, who had a good year.
Yeah. I mean, we'll probably have this talk if he decides to come out. But, as far as teams that might want to draft him, I don't see any of these teams in the 20s that would even consider picking him.
Let me give you my thought here. I think if I'm a team that needs a quarterback, I'm going to trade down, get draft capital, and I'd rather draft a quarterback in the 3rd round than draft the guys that they think are going early.
I would
rather not draft.
Well, we all know who that guy's going to be in the 3rd round.
But I would rather not draft. Like, if it was, and I mean nothing against these guys. I want to preface this by saying I mean nothing against these guys personally. I'm happy. I appreciate the seasons that they're having. I appreciate the careers that they're having. I just don't feel like I would want them to be my franchise quarterback. If I need a quarterback and I'm the Giants or the Raiders, I don't like any of them. I would not take Shedeur. I would rather not take Shedeur Sanders or Cam Ward, trade down in the 1st round, stay in the first round, get draft capital, and draft a guy like McCord in the third round. I would actually rather do that than do this. Or I would rather look to free agency and look to some trades and some guys that are backup quarterbacks. In all honesty, this year, and I hope Shador and I hope Cam Ward come out and have incredible careers. I absolutely hope that. If I'm a general manager right now in this moment, I am not taking a rookie quarterback in the first round of this draft. I'm going to trade down. I'm going to stay in the first round. I'm going to assess other issues that I have, because if I'm one of the worst teams in the NFL, it's not just my quarterback. I'm going to assess a bunch of different things that I have going on. In the case of these teams this year, I'm going to assess what I have going on. I'm going to stay in the first round. I'm going to draft a quarterback on day 3, and I'm going to go really hard at getting a backup quarterback.
I'd probably want to go day 2.
Well, I mean,
because it's the guy we want to take is the guy that you and I both agree on.
I just don't. If I'm the Raiders or the Giants, I don't.
The Raiders are dumb enough to do it. I can tell you that right now.
I wouldn't take Cam Ward. I would honestly. I would think this season, if I really desperately need a quarterback going into the draft, I would rather, if I'm the Raiders or I'm the Giants or I'm the Jets and so on and so forth, I would rather attack free agency and attack round 3 in day 2 or round 4 in day 3 and get a quarterback. I find more value in getting a later round quarterback and going after free agency than I do in the quarterbacks that are going to go early in this draft.
The thing is, the Raiders are dumb enough to do that. Not do what we just said. The Raiders are dumb enough to stay there and take one of those 2 guys.
Yeah.
Who it's going to be, I don't know. But they are dumb enough to do it. The Giants, if Daboll and Joe Shane stay and don't get fired, which I think if you're the Giants, I think it would be a mistake to let them go, because they are not the reason that this team is not succeeding. Yes, they let Saquon go, but that's besides the point. If I'm the Giants, I want to pull up the updated draft order if I can. Hang on. Here we go. 2025 updated draft order. Here we go. Wait a minute. The Raiders won. So they're picking 6 now. Oh, this is interesting. This is very interesting. Okay, so you look at the top of the draft. The Giants would still pick first if the season ended today.
Then New England.
Then New England, then Jacksonville, then Tennessee,
Cleveland.
then the Browns, Raiders, Panthers, and Jets.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm Joe Shane and I keep my job, the Raiders will do anything to trade up to get one of those guys. Guaranteed. They will probably give you 2, maybe even 3 first-round picks to come up and get one of them. I think it would be Shedeur Sanders would be my guess, but I don't know if Dion wants him to play there. I know Dion kind of is. I don't know if he's going to dictate where he goes, but he's going to kind of try to do it. The Raiders are dumb enough to do that. I guarantee it. If I'm Joe Shane, I would trade down to 6, or if the Titans want to come up and get him too, I'd trade down to 4. Someone else will trade up to 2 with the Patriots. So it's going to be the Titans and Raiders. Let's say the Titans and Raiders would both do it if the Giants don't want to take a quarterback. Both Giants trade down, Patriots trade down. 1-2 go Sanders and Ward. Let's say it's Tennessee that gets it done with the Giants. And the Giants are now picking 4th. Jacksonville is going to have their pick of Genty or Travis Hunter. I think they would take Travis Hunter in that situation. I'm sure you'd probably agree with that pick. Look who's sitting there at number 4 for the New York Giants. Ashton Genty. If I'm Joe Shane, you get all these picks. I want to make sure I get an extra second-round pick in there or 2, maybe a 3rd as well. If I'm Joe Shane, I make that trade with Tennessee. I sit there at number 4, and I take Ashton Genty. You have your replacement for Saquon. Now, Tyrone Tracy's been very good. So maybe you don't think you necessarily need to go running back. And if for whatever reason Jacksonville decides to take him, you could always take Travis Hunter. But then you look at round 2, round 3, there's your chance to take Kyle McCord. That's what I would do if I'm the Giants. I'd probably want to take him in round 2. Because I would probably want to go middle of round 2, maybe trade down with one of your picks and take him there, simply because I think somebody would be smart enough to take him. I could see Kyle McCord doing well at the combine and ended up being a late first round pick. I could see it.
Well, this year.
But
This year's not.
Because there's no other really good quarterbacks past the top 2.
No, there's
if
not.
If Ewers doesn't come out.
This is not a great year.
This is looking back to Kenny Pickett's year, 2022.
Yeah, this
realistically, the best quarterback in the draft was the last pick of the draft.
Yeah.
No one expected that.
And I didn't understand why Brock Purdy fell that far. Let's go back to the college football playoff here, let you know what's going on. But yes, if I were the Giants, Raiders, Titans, I would not be leveraging my future of my franchise on the guys that we're talking about here. And I think Tyrone Tracy's been the best part of their offense. So I think Tracy's got to.
I disagree. I think it's been neighbors, but Tracy's been very good.
He's got their future. He's definitely
been a big help to my fantasy team, that's for sure. And real quick, for the love of God, can the Saints please contain Josh Jacobs?
Don't.
Please contain Josh Jacobs.
I need him to go crazy.
I need him to not do anything.
I need him to go nuts.
I need him to do nothing.
Guess what?
Well, here's the thing. I'm up by 20 points, but he's also got Demario Davis. As long as Demario Davis isn't the one that's tackling him. He can get 19 points for all I care. As long as Demario Davis does nothing, I'd still be moving on.
Josh Jacobs, go have fun. So, I need it.
Please stop him.
I need it.
Come on, New Orleans, please.
Tennessee at Ohio State.
You don't have to win. You just need to contain Josh Jacobs.
Howard goes to freshman Jeremiah Smith for a touchdown to open the game for Ohio State, 7-0. Then we saw a touchdown run by Judkins for Ohio State, made it 14-0. And plenty of time left in the first quarter, 6+ minutes. It was already 14-0 Ohio State. Henderson for Ohio State, he got into the end zone, 21-0. Ohio State started off the game 3 for 3 on their drives. Not 3 for 3 in scoring, 3 for 3 touchdowns. So not only did they score on the first 3 drives of the game, they had touchdowns on their first 3 drives of the game, 21-0. And then almost great catch in the end zone. But Will Brooks, it's determined that he had an interception for Tennessee. It looked like it was a catch for Ohio State. It's in the hands of Will Brooks. They review it. They wonder if they were talking about the catch, because I went back and I watched it yesterday. They were talking about the catch and if there's like a difference between having the reception and I forget the exact word that the guy had when he was reviewing it, but not the official, but somebody was talking about it. It's not a forcible, but it was if he has the catch or if he had like something else with it. But they deemed that it was a catch. They deemed that he had control. And so Will Brooks gets the interception in the end zone and prevents that touchdown. Field goal with over 5 minutes left before halftime gets Tennessee on the board, 21-3. And then Imaeva has had he had a touchdown keeper, 21-10. It makes it for that Tennessee first touchdown of the game. Jeremiah Smith got his second touchdown catch, made it 21-10. Judkins had his second rushing touchdown, made it 35-10. Henderson had his second touchdown, made it 42-10. The game ends 42-17 with Judkins, Henderson, and Smith all getting in the end zone more than once. Howard and Ohio State just wreaking havoc on Tennessee, giving the SEC another team with 3 losses this season. Ohio State, congratulations. They never play these games in the regular season in non-conference. They only play 3 non-conference games instead of 4 because the Big Ten can do things like that because their conference gets respected inside. So they don't have to do what other conferences do, which is play a tough non-conference schedule to show how good they are. So Ohio State
congratulations. This was a test for them, and I liked that it was. Oregon was a test for them this season in their conference. Penn State was a test in their conference. But out of conference, they had no test this season until now, and they proved that they could pass the test. They beat the SEC. I don't like that they don't have non-conference games that test them. I'm happy Michigan played Texas. And what did I say? Let the Big Ten play a non-conference game of merit and see what they do. And Michigan got embarrassed at home by Texas. Ohio State did not play a tough game this season non-conference until now. But in that game, Ohio State proved that they are the cream of the crop of the Big Ten still. They win this game despite their loss to Michigan, who had 5 losses this year. Ohio State bounced back, found a way against Tennessee, beat an SEC team, beat a team that within the last couple of years was fighting to be in the college football playoff when there was only 4. So shout out to Ohio State. Shout out to what the success they had. Howard became their starting quarterback this year. A bunch of different weapons, as you saw with Judkins, Henderson, Smith, and the crew. The defense came to play in this game. Ohio State, as much as I would like to see them play a non-conference schedule of merit, as much as I don't think that they should be ranked as high as they are based on who they play, in this game itself, they proved that they should be here. They dominated. They had the most dominating win next to Penn State, also the Big Ten. And so, as I've said before, and I'll say it again, as an impartial broadcaster, I will look at these games, I will look at these teams, and give flowers where flowers should be. I don't get my flowers always, but I give my flowers. And Ohio State absolutely, positively should have a rose in each of the hands of these student athletes, offense, defense, and special teams. They played an incredible game from the start. They had this game from the beginning. They outplayed Tennessee in every stretch of the imagination, and outside of a few good plays by Tennessee, it was 98% Ohio State. So Ohio State looks extremely dangerous, and Oregon is going to have to play their best football to make sure that this game doesn't end in Ohio State's favor after Ohio State lost to Oregon during the season 32-31.
Yeah, I think, well, first of all, did you see Ohio State blasting Rocky Top in the stadium after the game?
Same Syracuse. They played Take Me Home, West Virginia. They played that when they beat West Virginia. Yeah. So I love that Country Roads. Yeah,
I know. Literally the entire time you went over that game log, in my head, I've been hearing Rocky Top in my head. Literally, I mean, it's a great song. Don't get me wrong, but Ohio State just flat out dominated Tennessee. And here's the thing. 100%. I really didn't think Tennessee was all that good this year. Yes, they beat Alabama, but I watched the Florida game start to finish, which was the week before they beat Alabama.
Yeah.
I was not a big fan of that Tennessee team. I did not see them doing all that much. I am not surprised at all they got blown out by Ohio State. I thought that one was gonna be the best game of the 4. It ended up being the biggest blowout of the 4. But realistically, and we're about to get to the Penn State game in a second, but all 4 of these games, I mean, the score in the Texas Clemson game indicates it was a blowout. It was a better game than the score shows, but the other 3 games were blowouts. Like, you do often see this in like the first week of the wild card round in the NFL, and sometimes where teams will squeak into the playoffs of the NBA or Major League Baseball and or in the NHL, and they'll get swept in the first round after losing 2 games. Let's say baseball, they lose 2 games 4-0 and 6-1, and it basically looked like they got completely outclassed. Yeah. That's what the first round of the college football playoff has been so far. Looking at it with 12 teams.
Yeah.
Remember how we were talking about how we could find a way to get to 16? I think if we did 16, you'd have teams get in, but you'd have teams that didn't deserve to be on the same field as the other. It
No, I
happened with
mean,
Tennessee,
it would
Ohio State.
it would open the door where you can let in multiple from conferences
Oh, sure.
and still
And
give
we've
you
talked and we've
and
talked
still
about
give your
that.
conference champion. Tennessee didn't have a great year. And when you
They
look,
beat Alabama. That was basically the highlight of their year.
they beat Alabama. They didn't play Ole Miss. They didn't play South Carolina. So those two teams that were very dangerous, especially late this season, those two teams weren't on the schedule for Tennessee. If I'm looking at Tennessee and they had beaten Alabama and then either Ole Miss or South Carolina or both and Ohio State beat them, I'd be like, holy crap. But I look at this and I say to myself, okay, they beat Oklahoma when
I mean, they didn't have a bad
ranked.
year, but they also weren't like.
But it wasn't a wow.
It's not like they were great.
It wasn't a wow. They beat Alabama. They beat an unranked Kentucky, an unranked Florida, an unranked Arkansas. They beat Oklahoma, who was ranked too high, obviously. They lost to Georgia on the road, 31-17. They beat Mississippi State, who was unranked. They won at
Vanderbilt's
Vanderbilt.
a better win than they're getting credit for,
Right.
so that's.
So the Vandy wins.
Vanderbilt
good.
was ranked multiple
Kentucky
times this year.
Kentucky plays spoiler, so that's good.
All the time.
Vandy-
Kentucky's the one
Vandy
team
one.
in the SEC East that you never want to see.
The Vandy one's good.
They're just annoying.
The loss to Arkansas, not great.
That was a bad loss.
But looking at these two, saying, well, their only losses were to Arkansas on the road, Georgia on the road. They didn't lose a game at home, and I mean, it wasn't the Tennessee that I saw 2 years ago. That I thought was really good, but it is a Tennessee team that obviously had 2 losses, and South Carolina had 3, Ole Miss had 3, and Alabama they beat head to head, so they get in because of that, which I understand. But Ohio State dominated them in the game. They were no match for Ohio State. They had no response to Ohio State whatsoever on any stretch of the imagination. And, I think that as we step forward here, they're learning the kinks. What people don't understand about the college football playoff, just because it's at 12 right now, doesn't mean it's going to stay at 12, and it doesn't mean that the rules within it are going to stay. That the top 4 seeds are going to be conference champions and not the top 4 ranked teams, or like the 4 best teams. The conversation of the 5+7 rule could be 6+6, which is what it was when the Pac-12 was in it, if they want to let the Pac-12 get in it. Right now, the Pac-12 is considered not a power conference. The new
Pac-12 is barely a conference at all right now.
The new iteration of it with all the teams coming in is actually considered a group of conference. There's 7 right now. They're trying to get an 8th member in, but I would think. But the way that things are right now, the 5+7 rule could be the 6+6. They could expand it. They could only have 2 buys instead of 4. They could change the top 4 to not being conference champions, but just the top 4 best ranked teams at the end of the season, which would have changed a lot of things too. That
would have changed a lot.
But the other thing that it did is that now the regular season matters. This college football playoff expansion, the way that it is right now with the rules that it has shown us that the regular season matters in most cases, and every game matters, unless you're Notre Dame. And it also shows you that the conference matters. The conference championship. The conference season matters. The conference championship matters as well. The conference championship in the expansion of the playoffs, there was a concern that the conference championship wasn't going to matter anymore. Your play within the conference to get to the championship wasn't even going to matter if you played in it, which it didn't matter for Indiana. It didn't matter for Ohio State. But when you look at what this playoff does with the rules that it has right now, it gives meaning to the first game of the season. It gives meaning to the games in the middle of the season. It gives meaning to the conference games. It gives meaning to the end of the season. It gives meaning to getting to the conference championship. It gives meaning to be a conference champion. So that all has meaning right now. So I would just say to the committee as they work out the kinks that there are things that they have done right. And I truly, honestly believe that this college football playoff expansion to 12 with the rules that they currently have and the setup that they have format-wise has brought more meaning back to the regular season, back to the end of the season, back to the conference championship. And I don't want to lose that.
Yeah, for sure. And ultimately, whatever they choose to do with the college football playoff over the next few years will be really, really interesting and fun to watch. But I do think that there are tiers in college football, and the four teams that were the 9, 10, 11, and 12 seeds are just in a tier way below the teams above them. So, like, SMU didn't look like they deserved to be on the same field as Penn State. Tennessee didn't deserve to be on the same field as Ohio State. Indiana had no business being on the field with Notre Dame. Clemson in the first half had no business being on the field with Texas, but they came back and at least made it a game. They pulled it within 7 before they gave up the touchdown immediately following. Um, but yeah, I'm ultimately not surprised at how things went, but I also thought Tennessee was going to give Ohio State more of a game. I don't know if that's a testament to how good Ohio State is, or that Tennessee was not that good. I think it's more of the Tennessee's not that good than Ohio State's really good. I still think Ohio State's very good. You know, like they're gonna give Oregon some fits. They already did once this year at Oregon. Now you're playing a neutral site game. I would not be shocked if Ohio State beats them. That would not shock me one bit.
They're right for a loss.
They are. I don't think they're going to make it to the final. I think they're either going to lose to Ohio State or Texas.
Oregon is arguably a weaker team than some of the others that had to play that first game, and because of the fact that, I mean, when you haven't lost, they're undefeated. They've had some scares. They've had scares from Boise State. They've had scares from Penn State. You know, Oregon's in a place right now where they got to keep their honestly, Oregon wins a national championship if their defense matches their offense.
Yes.
Their
and
offense,
they've done it all year. So if they continue to do that,
if their defense matches their offense and they can have the ball, because listen, they can score and they can score fast, and that's not always good. So the thing about Oregon is score fast, score often, but minimize your chances. Can you run the ball? Can you have success moving the ball down the field? Can you do what other teams have done, which is condense the clock? Georgia can condense a clock. Texas can condense a clock. Can Oregon put themselves in a position where they can run the ball, they can be successful with it, they can get down the field, they know that they're ahead, it's the fourth quarter, they get a guy who's open, he goes out of bounds at the 30 or the 40. Okay, we got a first down. Now let's run a couple times. Okay, let's pass to the outside. Let's set a screen. Let's systematically come down here. Let's not score in like 15 seconds and give them the ball back. What will Oregon do down the stretch here is going to mean a lot. And can they command a game? Can they defensively lock in? And can they trust themselves to run the ball and try to get some time off the clock, as opposed to, hey, we're going to score a lot of points and we're going to beat you with a lot of points. Can they condense that clock here? And we look at Oregon by the numbers here statistically on the ground with their 13-0 record this season. They're led by Jordan James, who has 1,253 yards, 226 carries, 5.5 yards a carry, and 15 rushing touchdowns. Noah Whittington is behind him with 112 carries, 537, 4.8 yards a carry, 5 touchdowns. Dylan Gabriel has 7 touchdowns as their quarterback on the ground. So overall, there's a couple other guys. Riggs has a touchdown, and Harris has a touchdown. They have 29. This is how crazy this is. They have 29 touchdowns as a team through 13 games, and Ashton Genty has 29 touchdowns himself through 13 games. So just absolutely incredible. And Bryson Daly had 29 touchdowns before his 13th game. So let's show him some love for that as well. With that being said, let's get to Penn State and SMU. I
want to hear about the atmosphere first.
So there's a lot I can say about this game, and I'm going to be more than happy to share that with you all. Penn State, which I had never been to before, created an atmosphere. Now, keep in mind, I got up early. I got to the game with about 3 hours before the kickoff, which is at noon. So I got there a little bit after 9. There was already.
Did you drive down the night before, or did you drive down
No,
that
I
night?
drove.
That day?
I drove the night before. So
Okay, I was gonna say, like, you've been waking up at like
no
5 a.m.
It
just
would
to
have
get
been
there.
way too early. So
Oh my goodness.
So you literally park in a field on like a mountain. Like you're on this giant, like it's this giant hill, and you just like come off on this hill and you park in different grass areas, and then you walk up, and there was a bunch of people there. There was a line 3 hours before. I mean, traffic going in was great. Not until you got to the exit did it start to get busy. I do want to credit Penn State for something that so many schools and professional teams don't do across multiple sports. There were signs at Penn State. There were, here is your parking lot. If you're 32 through 36, you stay in the left lane. If you're 31, you get in the right lane. If you're more than 36, if you're lot 38, then you take a left here and you don't come up this road. So many places that I've been to all across the country in my coverage of games, I have been to numerous stadiums where there is no rhyme or reason, there is no signage, there is no information. You have no idea where to park. Basically, when you come there for the first time, you're supposed to know where to go like you've been there 100 times. Penn State, I called my mom and I said this to her. I go, I want to give Penn State a lot of credit before I even get into Beaver Stadium, that I know exactly where I'm supposed to park, because there's not only was there a sign, there were signs all the way. Signs coming off the exit, signs at the exit, signs at this light, signs at the next light. So Penn State, whatever you're doing, I would love for you to share it with the rest of the world that does not tell us where to park, where to go, how to get into the stadium. Penn State, flawless in that respect. Second thing I want to say, conversely, the media entrance was the only thing that didn't have a sign. So like, I would say that I would love for there to be a sign. I walked around the entire stadium, and then I almost did it again. Actually, I think I did do it again. And they're like, yeah, it's right here. There was a sign for every entrance except for the media entrance. We were secret. And
oh man,
so that was the other side of it. But getting to Beaver Stadium, seeing the basketball arena, like right off to the right of me when I was walking.
Yeah, what the heck is that called?
Which is absolutely beautiful. And getting to Beaver Stadium, I was told by multiple people, it's nothing to look at from the outside, but wait until you get inside of it. And I get in, I go up to the press box. By the way, this was an awesome moment in my life. I don't think I've ever been able to say this before in 21 years of broadcasting, 21 years of covering sports. I had in the press box, and I have a picture of it, I was the first seat in the entire press box. I was number 1 front row on the page. And so I sat right by one of the end zones up in the press box. And looking at the stadium when I got there, and I had 2+ hours before the game, and there wasn't a ton of people that had sat in their seats yet, I looked around the stadium and I thought, this is one of the, and I was preparing myself for it, because from the outside looking in, I heard like, there's a ton of seats in Penn State, there's a ton of seats at Notre Dame, there's a ton of seats at Ohio State. And I can honestly tell you, looking at that stadium empty, it is one of the greatest football stadiums in America. Seeing how it's set up, kind of like there's a spot and it's cut, and there's an opening and it's cut, and the press box looks straight across at all the years of championships for Penn State, and it says the Penn State University. And that was incredible. The people trickling in was incredible. The whiteout was absolutely nuts. The videos that I posted don't do it justice. And the stadium was almost completely filled. There was a little bit of SMU down to my right by the end zone. They put this is one thing I thought was really not nice. They put the SMU band up, like at the top of the stadium. They made them go all the way up
I
the
actually
stairs.
read something about that.
It's awful.
Supposedly SMU chose to put them up there because they wanted the students on the field level.
Well,
that
Maybe not in that corner, but apparently they
any-
chose to have the
anybody
band
who
up
had
top.
to carry their stuff upstairs, I felt awful for them. But so Penn State was up in the right corner that you could, or SMU was up in the right corner you could see, and then down, or up in the left corner to where I was in the press box, and then down on the right corner. The experience, there was people trickling in all the way up to game time, into game time. I took a picture outside of the just fields of car, parking lots everywhere. There was more parking lots for Beaver Stadium than I think are the size of like a city. I think if you put the parking lots around the stadium and the stadium together, I mean it's a beacon. It's huge. It's incredible. You can feel the history.
Wait, you went out on the field?
It is. I went out onto the field. I went out at the end of the game.
Because I was scrolling through your Twitter because I was trying to find what the I was trying to find your tweet when you announced what they said the total attendance was
106,014.
106. That must have been how loud. Now I don't know how loud it was from the press box. I imagine it was louder outside, but how loud do you think it got when like they got that first pick six? I'm sure you heard it, but I'm sure it was louder outside.
I mean the whole stadium.
I've heard it like shakes when the crowd goes nuts.
Yeah. So here's the thing. Now, I've been to the bounce house at UCF. When the fans get up and they start stomping their feet in the bounce house at UCF down in Orlando for the Knights, the press box physically moves like a simulator. And you look at the poles and you can see yourself going forward and backward, and you can feel it in the seat. And you're like, wow. Now this at Penn State, when the fans got going, you felt like a little movement, but at UCF, you legitimately feel like this thing is going to like give way and you're going to fly off. So, but
that's crazy.
But yeah, so the experience at Penn State, where I sat was really, really cool. I had a TV right above my head, so I said whenever they did an instant replay, if there was a challenge or anything on the field, I would be the one to address it and watch it because the TV was like in my face. But if I stood up, it was right there. I trying to find words for this. I had brisket for breakfast, so they must. I mean, when they're like, "Hey, Dallas is coming to town. SMU's coming." They had hot dogs and they had kind of room temperature hot dogs, really good chocolate chip cookies, and some awesome brisket. So I don't know if Penn State does brisket often or if they did it just because the South was coming to the North. But shout out to whoever made that barbecue brisket. It was very good. But yeah, so I mean, the chicken and the Caesar salad was awesome too. But being where I was, going upstairs, when you go up in the elevator, you don't understand because it says you're going up like 3 floors. But when you walk down physically, you can walk down this like it feels like you shouldn't be able to do this, like it should only be for workers. But if you decide to walk instead of taking the elevator, it's far more than 3 levels, and you can like walk down and then you can walk across this like bridge thing, go to the other side. So it's a very old stadium in like the bones of it. But then
I think it was built in like the 20s.
But when you go, like walking in and looking through the glass in the press box and seeing the stadium, it was honestly, and I've been to a lot of places, it was one of the most mesmerizing, heart-stopping, oh my gosh, I would never want to be the opposing team in this stadium type of experiences. They were loud the entire time. I don't know if SMU could hear 5% of the game. And the fans were electric. The stadium was great. The intro was great. Everything on the field was awesome. I give credit to the girls that were out there that were wearing like almost no clothes, doing all their dances and all their regimen and everything. I felt awful for them because it was like 12 degrees outside. So shout out to them. And they don't get enough credit because they're out there performing and they probably couldn't feel any part of their body. And so shout out to the intro, to the band, to the fans, to the people that showed up for the whiteout. Shout out to the fact that 106,000 people showed up when it was absolutely freezing outside. When I did my post-game video on the field at the 50-yard line, I almost completely lost feeling in my right hand. I loved being on the field. It reminded me of being on the field at AT&T Stadium, which is the home of the Cowboys. It was reminiscent of that for me personally, like the weight of being on the field. So that was cool. Being on the field there was awesome. I got to stand in the end zone, went up to the 50-yard line, jogged on the field, touched the N from Penn State and the S from Penn State right before I left. So I got to like literally feel the field and be a part of the moment in that special way. I can honestly tell you that their press room probably costs more than most people's homes. There's a balcony in their press room for people to watch, I guess like VIPs or family members or whatever to watch. Coach Franklin, I have a lot of respect for him, more so now than ever. Tom Allen, really their OC and their DC, their special teams coordinator that I wish I got a chance to talk to, but he didn't come out. Justin Lustig was at Syracuse under Dino Babers. So proud of all of the coordinators and all the coaches. Really good to talk with their OC and their DC. Great to hear James Franklin speak. He started the press conference by saying, I want to thank all of the media in this room for covering Penn State athletics. He said, I know I say it all the time and you guys might think like, that I don't mean it or whatever, but he's like, I truly honestly mean it. I truly honestly appreciate it. He talked about the family. He talked about who they are. And so hearing him speak and really feeling that, like I'm the type of person where I feel like I know if somebody means something and I feel like I know if they don't. And when you're in a room with someone, you can really feel their energy. James Franklin's got, what I can say to you in probably the simplest terms is I can understand why a lot of people commit to play for him. And the really cool thing from Tom Allen, who I covered his son when his son was getting recruited out of HB Plant in Tampa. And when Syracuse was recruiting a lot of guys from that class and from Tom Allen's son's class, who's also Thomas Allen. So Tom, when he answered my question, he gave a really awesome answer. Both coordinators did. When he finished the answer to my question, he went, "We are." And so that type of stuff,
Penn State,
like that type of stuff, you can't feel if you're not physically there the same way. So hearing a coach say "we are" in that room, in that building, hearing James Franklin talk, hearing how loud it was in the press box behind glass upstairs, I can't imagine that any eardrum was working for SMU on the field. The whiteout was absolutely incredible to see. I walked out of there, and I think this to this day. The Big Ten definitely has an advantage with committees and polls. What I will say about Penn State having been there is they say the South is football. They say the South has the best stadiums, the best fans, and the best environments. I would put that 100,000 seat stadium, if you put it in the South, it would have the same effect. I think that the North is well represented in football by Penn State. I think the arena brings you the history while making new memories. And I don't know if there's a harder place to play that I have been to in the North than Penn State. And I think if the South is known for their stadiums and their fans and their atmosphere, I think Penn State should get some respect with Southern teams, having been.
Oh, 100%. And like I said, I think part of the reason SMU had such a big problem with Penn State had to do with the crowd. I think that was a huge part of it.
Absolutely.
I mean, you play that game in a neutral site. Does Penn State still beat them handily? Probably, but not the way they did in Happy Valley. I am so excited to try and get to a game there next year. My goal for next year, because October, November is pretty slow for this new job.
Yeah.
I need to go to the whiteout, and I need to go to a Florida game at the Swamp. I want to go to both. I don't care who Florida's playing. I'd like it to be a decent team because I think DJ could be really good. I just don't want to go to the Florida-Georgia game. I would, but I probably won't because I'd rather go to the Swamp. Maybe, who knows? Maybe I'll go to both. But I definitely want to see the atmosphere in the Swamp, see the atmosphere at Penn State for myself. Because anybody that's been to those games can tell you that it's unbelievable. And we need to get rid of Big Noon Kickoff, for starters. Because I don't want to go to the whiteout when they're playing UCLA. I'd want to go to the whiteout when they're playing Ohio State, when they're playing Michigan, when they're playing Oregon.
Well, I'm happy they brought it
Good
out
teams.
for the college football playoff. Penn State's
You knew they were going to.
well,
though.
Penn State's never
You
been.
knew they were going to.
Penn State has never been in the college football playoff until this year. So they've never won a college football playoff game until this year. So they made history in being in the college football playoff, winning a college football playoff game in the first year of the first round, doing it at home, doing it in the historic expanded playoff year. So their first year in the college football playoff is the history of the first 12 team, the history of the first round, the history of the fact that the better seed gets the home game. And this game that they won in the college football playoff on their own field was the 100th win for James Franklin.
Yeah. And, honestly, James Franklin's taken a lot of criticism over the years for his, on-field decisions and his struggles against, AP top 25 teams. And, I get it. But this team would not be where they are without him.
No.
He is a phenomenal recruiter.
Remember, he brought them through the Sandusky years.
Yes, he did. He is a phenomenal recruiter. Outstanding recruiter. And that's a lot of the reason why they're picking up some of these guys. Remember, Saquon was not a big recruit out of college. He went to out of high school. Out of Whitehall High School. He went to Penn State. Obviously being from Pennsylvania, from Whitehall, he was probably a Penn State fan, I would assume.
Yeah.
I don't know for sure. But going to Penn State, he was a 4-star recruit. And don't get me wrong, 4-stars are still good players. But it's not like he was this highly touted 5-star recruit coming out of Whitehall. He was a good player. But he turned into Saquon at Penn State. He's a good recruiter. They develop talent. They are still linebacker U. They've got so many linebackers in the NFL and have had so many linebackers in the NFL, it's ridiculous.
Well, I will say
looking at... Go ahead, yeah.
Dom DeLuca and Tony Rojas, I mean, I would want them to play for my defense. I would want Warren to be my tight end, Drew Aller in the leadership. And I talked to Drew Aller after the game, and that's all up on my social media. But when I spoke with Drew Aller, their starting quarterback, I said, hey, you're the starting quarterback of this team offensively, but defensively, these guys set you up. They gave you 2 defensive touchdowns, or all 3 of their interceptions led to touchdowns, 2 returned for a touchdown. The other one set up the first offensive touchdown. And he said, I am so happy that I play against this defense in practice and not in a game. And so Tony Rojas, Dom DeLuca, I mean, there's so much to be said. You can go and read my game story. I'm actually going to share it here on the feed, but I implore you to go and read the game story. There's a lot that I wrote in this story. I don't have to do anything I do. And when it comes to writing this article on the game, Penn State wins historic first college football playoff game, there is the picture is mine that's in here. And there's a lot of information within this matchup, just bringing you through it. As if I write my game stories in the mindset that if you didn't see a second of the game, that reading my game story will help you to literally see the game from start to finish while you read. So I'm going to share it here in the feed so you guys could check it out. But it was
the big thing you mentioned. So you mentioned Tyler Warren in that, like the guys that you'd love to have on your team.
Yeah.
they need to get him more involved. That was the issue against Ohio State. That was part of the issue against Oregon. But then again, teams are keying in on him and just trying to cover him. He's not Brock Bowers, don't get me wrong, but he's very good. I could easily see him being an early pick. Maybe mid to late first, early second round pick. Um, but if Penn State can get him involved, and he does more than just, block and catch passes, he'll run the ball. They'll hand the ball off to him, and he'll run the ball out of the Wildcat, and he'll run it up the gut and can get 4 or 5 yards. He does everything for Penn State. They just need to get the ball in his hands. That's something I think they're going to try and really do against Boise State. And if they do, I think they're going to be very successful because he is such a great offensive player that you put the ball in his hands and he's going to make something happen. The thing is, Penn State's also developed tight ends pretty well recently, too. I mean, as recently as Pat Fryermuth coming out of Penn State with the Steelers. Tyler Warren's going to be another guy who's going to be an NFL tight end, probably for quite some time. I'm interested to see what they end up doing with him. I think he's a guy that you need to get the ball in his hands and they need to punch it in as many times as they can because Genty's going to score. Genty's going to run the ball down your throat. You need to do it. But I just want to go to a game there so bad, man. Seeing what you posted with the atmosphere and what I've heard from other people about it, I just want to get there and see it for myself. I think it'd be the coolest thing ever. I might be getting myself a white Saquon Penn State jersey. So that might be something worth getting for me.
Yeah, well, I will say this. So, the experience was great. SMU beat themselves. Now, in the second half, Penn State woke up offensively. But SMU absolutely beat themselves. Kevin Jennings, 2 of his 3 interceptions were thrown literally right to Penn State. He overthrew his running back. Well, he overthrew his running backs on 2 of them. And I will say the first interception threw it right into the chest of the guy, returned for a touchdown. The second interception was insane in the sense of the fact that SMU, and I would say this to Rhett Lashley and his staff, they need to practice tackling with the offense because that second touchdown, which I believe was Rojas, that second touchdown, there's no way in heck that guy high steps it out of all of those tackles and doesn't get taken down to the ground. SMU struggled in tackling in this game. They struggled in tackling at the first point of contact. So that was an issue. Kevin Jennings making mistakes was an issue. Jennings can run around the field like Michael Vick, but the problem is he won't throw the ball out of bounds. He will try to, right before he goes out of bounds, he will play street ball and he'll try to just loft it in the air and just he'll start to be going out of bounds and he'll just jump and throw it and hope that it hits somebody. Well, Jennings in this game, 2 of his 3 interceptions were absolutely to Penn State, like I said. SMU struggled in tackling, especially on the second one. And the other one, it was a tip ball. He does throw those line drives at times, Kevin Jennings does. And he threw a line drive or a lower pass and DeLuca hit it. And he tipped it up in the air and he caught it himself. And that set up the first offensive touchdown for Penn State for the game. Penn State proved that they could run the ball on the ground. Drew Aller didn't have to do much in this game. His statistics weren't great. But the team overall, I will say this, Kevin Jennings' decision-making cost this team the game early. 21-0 due to 3 interceptions, 2 of them thrown directly to a Penn State player.
It was literally over by
to me,
3 minutes. 3 minutes left in the first.
You're
half.
on the road. You got 106,000 people. You got a whiteout. You got people yelling at the top of their lungs. The stadium is mostly all Penn State. And in that atmosphere, in that environment, in this historic moment, on their field, you can't afford to throw 3 interceptions in a game at any point.
and think you're going to win the game. 3 interceptions in the first half, 2 in the first quarter, to the point that SMU was playing and Kevin Jennings was playing. I put a poll out during the game. Preston Stone's in the transfer portal, but Preston Stone's the guy who Kevin Jennings took the job from. And I asked the fans, do you want to see Preston Stone come out here? Like, he's in the portal, but do you want to see him on the field? It would be strange, but do you want to see him come out? 79% of people said yes. And my dad texted me. He was like, they're in this quarterback's head. And they come out with the ball in the second half, and you think, okay, can they do something? The issue with SMU, on top of Kevin Jennings making those decisions that they made, is as an offense, they weren't scoring in the red zone. They get inside the 20, Penn State, they didn't score. Get inside the 10, they didn't score.
They've had that problem all year.
So SMU...
That's going to be the thing that prevents them from winning it all. But
So SMU, and they struggled against BYU in that game where nobody could get in the end zone on either side. So, or else they would have been undefeated going into the ACC champ. They would have been undefeated overall. SMU beat themselves before Penn State had a chance. And then once Penn State got going offensively, if this game was, and it could have been, if they had minimized those turnovers and they had done what they needed to do in the places that they were, the defense was handling Penn State. Penn State wasn't getting a lot done. If Kevin Jennings had made better decisions and that offense had taken advantage of where they were on the field, that game at halftime would have been 17-14, 17-10, somewhere in that world. The offensive mistakes dug too deep of a hole, and in the second half, Penn State came out and played offense, and which is what they did toward the end of the first half. So Penn State had all the help they needed from their defense. Then they came in and poured it on in the second half. The game was a blowout to people turning that on, but in the first half, I will say this, and I'm not saying this because I cover SMU and because I know Rhett Lashley. SMU didn't need anybody to beat them in the first half. They were doing a good job, as in the movie Liar Liar with Jim Carrey, of kicking their own butt. And they absolutely kicked their own butt in the first half. They know that they did that, I'm sure. And in the second half, Penn State came to play. And maybe there was some wind out of the sails of the defense that kept setting up SMU's offense. I know what that's like. Syracuse had years of defenses setting up the offense over and over again, 7 possessions, 8 possessions, and they come away with 2 possessions with a score, 1 possession with a score, field goals, no touchdowns. So it had to be debilitating to the defense. And after a while, I think it just caught up with the defense that the offense wasn't performing. And ultimately, Penn State came with a romp. But I will say that the game ball should go to Tony Rojas, Dom DeLuca, and the defense, because they were where they needed to be. They took advantage of bad decisions. SMU shot themselves in the foot. Penn State was all over it. And I don't know if I've seen a team this season take as much of an advantage over a team that makes mistakes like Penn State did. 3 touchdowns off of 3 interceptions in the first half, 2 returned for a touchdown. By the way, historically, the last time that happened, and I do want to get to this note because it was a really cool note from the game, but Penn State to have 2 touchdowns or 2 interceptions returned for a touchdown in a game, I want to let you know about this for a second here, because it has been an extremely long time historically that this has happened. So I want to make sure I mention it. It was before the announcement. Oh, here it is. Penn State's 2 interceptions returned for touchdowns in this game marked the first time they've achieved this feat since Friday, November 28th, 1998, when a pair of Nittany Lions defensive backs, David Macklin and Anthony King, returned interceptions for touchdowns against Michigan State in Big Ten Conference play. So the first time 2 interceptions returned for a touchdown with this team in almost 30 years, from 1998 to where we are right now in 2024.
Don't you dare make me feel old. I was born in 98.
But that's insane. That's some pretty crazy stuff. So
you could have said just over 25 years.
No, almost 30.
Instead of saying almost 30.
Almost
Are you
30.
trying to tell me almost 30?
Almost 30. But yeah,
Jeez, man.
Penn State.
I still got 3.5 more years for that.
Penn State making history in a lot of different ways. And to get into their first college football playoff game, win their first game they ever played, do it on their field
in the inaugural year of the 12-team playoff, in the inaugural year of the first down, or in the first round, and with their head coach getting 100 wins in front of 106,000 plus people. Absolutely incredible day. I'm happy I was a part of it. I enjoyed every moment, and I would honestly say it was a near perfect experience at Penn State. I will take that, honestly, with everything that I've done in sports, I will take this game at Penn State as one of the greatest experiences I've had in 21 years of covering sports.
It had to have been amazing, man. I can't wait to try and get out there and see that atmosphere because it looks incredible. But one, the last thing I'll say on this game, I mean, you hit the nail on the head. Penn State's defense, or Penn State just took advantage of SMU's mistakes, and good teams do that.
Yeah,
good teams will take advantage of your mistakes. SMU probably knew that full well going in. They knew the atmosphere was not going to be easy, and maybe it wasn't necessarily that the fans were in his head, but it was probably difficult to hear what he was telling you. So I imagine a couple of those picks were just the receivers and the quarterback were not on the same page.
I don't know how he could hear if it was deafening to me in the press box behind glass up a few levels. I have no idea. If it was as loud up high in the air on the field, it had to, like, your eardrums.
It had to be
must have
horrible.
been
It had
gone.
to be unbelievable.
Yeah. Murph,
They do.
what'd you say?
But that's the whiteout at Penn State, though. I mean, that's what those fans do. 106,000 strong
Crazy.
in the whiteout at Penn State. This is why any team that goes to Penn State, goes to Ohio State, or goes to Michigan, which I would argue those three places are the three toughest places to play in all of college football. When you go in there, the noise is deafening.
Yeah.
You can't hear a thing on the field. I can't imagine Jennings could hear anything. So
That's why I'm happy my
credit to
ears.
Penn State and their fans.
Yeah. I'm happy
They
my
deserve
ears
it.
and my body were warm upstairs. There was some cool air coming through, but the experience was great. The views were great. I think Pennsylvania is a beautiful state, and I mean, I've spent a lot of time in PA. The rolling hills are tremendous. So the experience was great. The location was great. The time was well spent. And I want to thank the coaches. I want to thank the student athletes. I definitely want to thank Andy, and I want to thank Andy Kotelnicki and the offensive coordinator, as well as D coordinator Tom Allen. And I want to thank quarterback Drew Aller for answering my questions. I want to thank Penn State's incredible staff and wonderful people working in their sports information. I want to thank the College Football Playoff. I want to thank SMU. I want to thank Rhett Lashley. I want to thank Chris behind the scenes at SMU and all the student athletes there as well. I got to see them come in because I was walking by and I heard somebody say something. And I'm like, oh, I don't think the buses came in yet. And we could see the arrival. And when I was walking around the stadium trying to find the media, something inside of me was like, should I wait and cover this instead of like trying to find the media, go upstairs, come back down? So when I walked back after I'd walked around the stadium once, they had the gate up and the buses were coming in. So I looked up at God and I'm like, oh, so you wanted me to be here for the SMU arrival? Because I was like, should I do it? And then God was like, oh, well, now you're here. And so I actually got the arrival of the buses coming in. I talked to the commissioner of the ACC, Jim Phillips, before the game off the air, but we had a nice conversation. He was out at Clemson, Texas, in Texas, in Austin. And so shout out to him and Amy Yacola and their tremendous support, as they knew I was out at Penn State and they were down in Texas with Jim Phillips down in Texas covering, being there for that game. So definitely a great experience. Loved both teams being there. I respect both teams. SMU beat up on themselves. they gotta make up for that now, or work toward shoring that up as we step forward. Keep in mind, Kevin Jennings, this is his first season as a starter, and he went 9-0 before he lost a game in the last second in the ACC Championship, 34-31, when he helped lead his team all the way back from a game that people thought was insurmountable, plus the fact that he's only a sophomore going into his junior season. And Drew Aller, I mean, he's young in the game as well. I'm excited. I still think he's a young gun. I think there's a lot that he can do that's left in the tank. I'm excited to see what they could do against Boise State. It's one thing to say that Boise State's one-dimensional and you just have to stop Ashton Genty. Nobody's really done that. So not even Oregon in that game. There was a 3-point loss for Boise State, their only loss of the season. So it'll be interesting, but Murph and I have the opportunity to take a look at the bracket. Murph's going to give his picks. I'm going to give mine. So we're going to go ahead and for DT and Murphy, we're going to put DT on one side. We're going to put Murph on this. Let me make a P there. There we go. We're going to put Murph on this side. And Murph, I want you to give me your picks for Texas, Arizona State, Ohio State, Oregon, Penn State, Boise State, Notre Dame, Georgia. Who's going to make it to the next round? Who are you picking for the quarterfinals? And just to give a little bit of background so that you all know this before we make our picks, this is how it goes. The Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl, which will be on site on location for by the grace of God and thanks to the wonderful team at the Peach Bowl Inc., we'll see number 4 seeded Arizona State, who had a bye through the first round as the Big 12 champion, take on 5th seeded Texas. That game will be on January 1st at 1 p.m. Eastern Time in the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl down in Atlanta, Georgia. The Rose Bowl, presented by Prudential, will be off on the West Coast, and that game will also be played on January 1st at 5 p.m. Eastern Time, 2 p.m. Pacific Time, with number 1 seeded Oregon, who had a bye as the Big Ten champion, having a rematch with 8 seed Ohio State, who they defeated by 1 point, 32-31 in their first season in the Big Ten. In the Verbo Fiesta Bowl, which Penn State will be in, and those signs were already up on the stadium when I was on the field. They were already up on the boards. Number 3 seed Boise State, who had a bye as the Mountain West champion, will face off 6-seeded Penn State. That game will be on December 31st, my dad's birthday, at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time. That game in Arizona. And then the All-State the Sugar Bowl. That game will be Georgia, the 2 seed, who had a bye after being the victor over Texas this season, not once but twice, winning the SEC championship. They will face off against independent 7 seed Notre Dame. That game will be on January 1st at 8:45 p.m. Eastern Time. So just like the first round, 1 game on one day, 3 games on the next, 3 games on January 1st, 1 on December 31st, which will be Penn State and Boise State. What I love about this is that all the teams get to spend Christmas at hopefully around family. They get to have some time to actually enjoy Christmas Eve and Christmas, and that there's such a distance between the first round and the quarterfinal, which will be on December 31st and January 1st. So I love the fact that I get to spend time with my family, and hopefully they do too. With that being said, Murph, we have the Peach Bowl, the Rose Bowl, the Fiesta Bowl, and the Sugar Bowl. Who do you have winning? We'll start with Texas and Arizona State.
I think this one's pretty easy. It's Texas. I mean, they were the best team, or the second best team in college football basically all year long. Arizona State hasn't done anything to make me think that they're even really gonna have a chance to do anything and compete with Texas. I think this one's gonna be another blowout. So I got Texas by a lot.
Yeah, I'm also going to pick Texas in this game. Again, I've touted them throughout the season as being a very strong team, one of the best teams in the country. I think there was a little dip, not too much, but somewhat of a little okay against Georgia. We go to overtime, but you need to finish this game up. So, Texas, to me, I think they're on the upswing. I think if they win this game, especially commandingly, it definitely shows that. I consider them one of the most dangerous teams in this year's college football playoff. Next game, so we've covered this game. I'll give it a little circle there. The next game that we have up here, and we both have Texas moving on, so I'll circle Texas. And then the next one we have Ohio State and Oregon. A lot of people wanted to see this rematch. I don't think either one of them wanted to see this rematch this early in the bracket. But Ohio State and Oregon, what do you got in the Rose Bowl?
Call me crazy. I'm picking Ohio State. I'm gonna do it. I think it's gonna be another really good game. The the Rose Bowl is different, especially because these two teams have played there many times before. They've played each other in the Rose Bowl before. There's something to be said about playing at the Rose Bowl in the Rose Bowl game.
Yeah.
I would argue it is the most special stadium in all of college football.
It's the oldest game.
It is the oldest game. It's the granddaddy of them all. I would argue it is the best bowl game, period. I wish it was the national championship game every year that you could play at the Rose Bowl. I don't know why they continuously just play the national championship in Atlanta every year. Change it up a little bit, college football. Play at the Rose Bowl. Or something. Whatever. But yeah, I'm going to go Ohio State. I think it's... I know you're going to disagree with me, but I think Ohio State... I think the Michigan loss woke them up. I think it's the same thing that happened with Notre Dame losing to NIU. I think it woke them up. So I think I'm going to take Ohio State over Oregon. I think Oregon's due to lose a game, and I could see Ohio State getting it done.
Murph going with OSU in this one. This is tough for me. This is really tough because what Ohio State showed me against Tennessee was that they could win this whole thing. I do think that Ohio State is one of the best teams in college football right now. I do believe that Ohio State has put themselves in a position from what I've seen on the field. And again, was Tennessee really that great this year? I wouldn't say that, they were leaps. I don't think they were better than they were a couple of years ago. But Ohio State winning the game by the amount that they won that game shows me that they would have beaten Indiana by 60. And I think that they're going to be a really tough game for Oregon. On Oregon's side, I have spoken about Dylan Gabriel with my buddy who's been on the show many times, who's been in many jobs in the sports and entertainment world, Jason Lucas, about Dylan Gabriel when he was at UCF, when he was a freshman, when he barely played and was asked to come in for 2 games in the season that they were undefeated for the second time. And that he went to the West Coast and almost beat LSU, losing by 8 in his second college football game ever. Second college football game ever. He had to play in a bowl game against LSU on the West Coast. And he only lost by a possession. Then we saw him go to Oakland. And I still think he should have been up for the Heisman before. I think he should have been up for the Heisman well before this season at Oregon. Then he went to Oklahoma. Oklahoma obviously isn't better without him. They've shown that this year. And Oregon is better with him. I mean, Oregon lost Bo Nix, and you're like, what are they going to do? Well, they went and got Dylan Gabriel. That's the beauty of free agency in college football now. And you can go handpick a starter from somewhere, which is what happened to Tulane. It's what happened to Washington State. And now we're in a place where, looking at this game, I think there's a target on their back. They're undefeated. They're the number 1 seed. Ohio State wants revenge. They're going to the West Coast. Oregon fans are happy about that, I'm sure. And as much as I think that Ohio State can win this game, I think Oregon's going to get at least 1. So I'm going to give Oregon the victory here to win this matchup over Ohio State. But let me be on record as telling you, if Ohio State wins this game and they win it big, there will not be a surprise face the next time that we talk about this game. I'm giving Oregon 1 win here. I don't know if I'm going to give them more than 1, but I think Oregon's going to get at least 1. I think Dylan Gabriel and the offense will be ready for this. But I do believe that Ohio State is a tough out this year. they have impressed me. They have absolutely impressed me. It's one thing to beat an SEC team that has 2 losses. It's another thing to beat them by the largest margin. That margin of victory. Them and what Penn State did to SMU, incredible. But, Ohio State did it with their offense. They didn't rely on 3 interceptions that turned into touchdowns like Penn State did. Ohio State's offense was just dominant, and their defense was dominant. So, to me, not that I'm saying Penn State's offense and defense wasn't dominant. I'm just saying they were different games as far as the scoring went. Ohio State, to me, I didn't anticipate their offense to come out like that. So I give them a lot of credit. I'm going to pick Oregon. I'm going to give them a slight edge, probably by a field goal. They only won by 1 before. It'll probably be 1 possession in this one by a point or 2. Next game that we have is going to bring us to the Fiesta Bowl out in Arizona, Boise State and Penn State. What do you got?
This is one we talked about before. I pretty much said if you can hold Genty to under 150 in a touchdown, you're going to have a very good chance to win. That defense is very good for Penn State. I'm picking Penn State because I think the defense is good enough to hold Genty, maybe not necessarily from the yardage, but to hold him out of the end zone for more than one time. I think that would go a long way for them. And I just don't think Boise State, they've got to play a near perfect game to beat Penn State, in my opinion. So I'm going Penn State. I think it'll be closer than people would expect. I could see it being a 1-score game. That's probably what I would guess. I don't know what the spread is yet. I haven't looked. I can find out though. I don't know. They are. Let's see. Wow.
10.5.
Penn State is a 10.5 point favorite. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
I could see Boise State covering that. So I think Boise State could cover that 10.5 points, but I think Penn State will win the game outright.
The over-under is 52.5. I think that's too low.
I agree.
I think that's way too low.
Honestly,
I would take the over all day.
I'd parlay Penn State money line in the over. I think that would be a really nice. That could make you a little bit of money.
Yeah. So Murph's going to go with Penn State. I want Boise State to win this game. I really do. Boise State never got to play in the BCS. They were told that they could call themselves national champions from the NCAA years ago when they went, I think, 13-0. And they didn't play in the national championship game. They were undefeated. The champion was undefeated. So they never gotten to play for a national championship. Ashton Genty is, to call him a generational talent, I think is disrespectful. I think he, like Shohei Ohtani, we have to find a better word. They're not a generational talent. They're a cosmic talent.
He's a unicorn.
Yeah, there's things in life that are unicorn-esque. And Genty is one of those. It's a great word. Looking at this game, having watched Penn State, having seen them. Now, let's see how the fans travel out to Arizona. But having watched Penn State, seen their defense firsthand, and seen DeLuca, seen Rojas, and seen the crew do what they do, and that they can run at times, of course, if they need it, and there's different things that they can bring to the table, Drew Aller is going to have a game. And Ashton Genty's going to have a game. And I really, like when we did our going into this bracket, because obviously as the bracket changes, we're going to give you our picks of the games that are actually happening. But I told you Boise State. I mean, I think that there's a world where Boise State could run the table. It's a Cinderella story. Boise State's got nothing to lose. But I saw this Penn State defense, and it's a defense of nightmares. So I'm going with Penn State to win this game over Boise State. As much as I want to see Boise State win, and with no offense to Penn State, I really want to see Boise State win just because of the lack of respect for them in so many conferences. They're leaving and going to be in the new Pac-12, so, for them to do this for the Mountain West would mean a lot for the Mountain West, too. I would love to see it happen. I want to see Genty continue to do backflips on the field after the game. But I don't know if I can go against this linebacker core and this Penn State team. I think there's way too much. Like I said, do it on the field, and I'll respect it. In the polls, we know you're going to get the advantage. We know the Big Ten's protected in the polls. Do it on the field, and there's nothing that can be said. You do it on the field, and there's nothing that can be said. Penn State did it on the field. So I'm picking Penn State. Last game that we have here, Notre Dame, Georgia. This game is going to take us to the All-State Sugar Bowl. And that All-State Sugar Bowl game, I'm excited for this one as well. This is a good game. Again, Notre Dame has nothing. I mean, Notre Dame's playing in this game probably with a lot of people picking against them. And it's going to be down in New Orleans, Louisiana. So obviously closer to Georgia, closer to them dogs. And you know that Syracuse head coach Fran Brown, he said, you know where it's at, go Dogs. So are you picking the Dogs, Murph, or are you going Notre Dame?
I think if Carson Beck was playing, it would be an easy pick of Georgia. The fact that there's a pretty good chance that he's not going to play makes this very, very interesting. Georgia's offense was not the same when he went out. I want to pick Notre Dame. I really do. I just don't know if I can. You know what? It's not like I'm putting money on it. Give me Notre Dame. Give me the Fighting Irish to knock off the number 2 seed Georgia. Going to be without their starting quarterback, very likely. Notre Dame, since the loss to NIU, has played very, very well. I'm taking Notre Dame. I'm going to do it.
Murph, going out on a limb here. Going out on a limb and picking Notre Dame. And you know who beat Texas with one limb? One arm, one limb on the top? Carson Beck. When he came into the game and had a lame right arm and handed the ball off, and that first play that overtime play, that rush right into the end zone, gave the victory in the SEC championship to Georgia over Texas. Notre Dame, you showed me something against a team that I don't even think is within 3 tiers of you. I respect it. Jeremiah Love, I want to see what he's going to do against a good team and a good defense. I want to see what Notre Dame looks like against one of the greatest teams that we've had in recent history. Not just this season, but a team that is working to try and build a dynasty here under Kirby Smart. Kirby Smart's last name shows you he doesn't make a lot of dumb moves. Notre Dame and Mr. Freeman, they didn't have a good year last year in his first year. This year, they bounced back. Now, other schools losing to Northern Illinois, that would have ended their season in week 2. Notre Dame goes 11-1. I give them more than one quality win. Their win over Army is when Army was undefeated. Their win over Texas A&M on the road, both of those wins, I give Notre Dame as a feather in their cap. And I think both of those were better than beating Indiana. Indiana was a good game for Notre Dame. It was a good game. Let's see how they do when they got to face. I don't care if Carson Beck had no arms. Gunner comes out there. Gunner's going to go to work. He's going to do his thing. Can Gunner be the next success story of the backup quarterback that took over and made it happen? We've seen it come out of the SEC before. We saw 3 guys fighting for a job at Alabama that all ended up being starting quarterbacks in the NFL. With Tua,
Jalen, and Mac. And they're all starting right now with Trevor Lawrence being down in Jacksonville. Georgia has been better than Alabama recently. Georgia finds ways. They found ways in 8 overtimes. They found ways in the SEC championship. They found ways in a baseball game against Kentucky, 13-12. How can I bet against the team that keeps finding a way? Give me Georgia and them dogs. And let's see how this goes here. Murph going with Texas, Ohio State, Penn State, Notre Dame. I'm going with Texas, Oregon, Penn State, and Georgia. Murph and I could both be right with Texas and Penn State, and then one of us is going to be right with Oregon and Ohio State, and one of us is going to be right with Georgia or Notre Dame. With that being said, those are our picks for you here on Wake Up Call. Final notes, Murph, that you would like to make on this Christmas week as we talk with people for a few more seconds as they go into their Christmas Eve and Christmas Day.
Honestly, just want to wish everybody a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Hopefully 2025 is a much better year for everybody. Different things are happening in the world than we would like, and hopefully the start of 2025 means new beginnings for us here at home and abroad. So really, that's really all I have. Just Merry Christmas, everybody. Also, let's go Mets. Sean Manaea is coming back. So just Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and we'll see y'all in 2025.
Yeah. Well, with that being said, we appreciate y'all for being here with us on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora and for DT and Murphy on Mondays. Murph and I can agree that give them the unfair advantage or not, no matter what anybody says, Ohio State and Penn State came to play, and they look good. They look really good. And I'm happy that we have a 12-team playoff right now, because the 12-team playoff gives us...
That's what I've been trying to say all year, dude. They are good.
But this is when okay, you can be good against a bunch of unranked teams. In that case, there's a lot of good teams out there. So
they proved it. They proved it this weekend.
They proved it this weekend, right. And I'd love it if they would play these games early on in the season, but if they did that, they might not be in the college football playoff. So watching what they've done here, seeing what these teams have done, Texas in their handling of Clemson, Ohio State in their manhandling of Tennessee, SMU just being absolutely trounced by Penn State's defense, taking advantage of everything that SMU gave them and then turning their offense on after that. And to see the game with Notre Dame against Indiana. Each of these teams have moved forward. Now they're going to have an opportunity against the top 4. These teams have been waiting in the wings. Boise State getting Penn State. Georgia getting Notre Dame. Oregon getting Ohio State again. And Texas going into the unloving arms of Arizona State, who's trying to make some continued history in the Peach Bowl. It all comes to us next week. Enjoy your Christmas. We got a special with Bryan and Stratton College of Syracuse coming up for Christmas Eve for you tomorrow. And I bid you all adieu after we have this fast break. Murph, Merry Christmas to you and your loved ones. Thank you for all that you bring to the show. Appreciate you, and I hope you have a safe and Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas to you too as well, and Merry Christmas to everybody back at home. We'll see you in the new year.
See you in the new year. So with that being said, we're going to take a step aside here on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora, our final step aside, and wrap things up right after this.
Hi, this is Amy from Mother's Cupboard, home of the whole frittata. We are open daily 6 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. For takeout orders, call 315-432-0942 and tune in to Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora for our monthly food challenge and try our Wake Up Call signature menu item available 7 days a week. Here at Mother's Cupboard, we are Central New York, and it's our honor to serve you.
Ma and Pa's Kettle Corn and Popcorn Factory remind us that every day is worth celebrating at 201 7th North Street in Liverpool, New York. Open Monday through Saturday in-store and always online at maandpaspopcorn.com. Serving our Central New York community and beyond, order anywhere, anytime at maandpaspopcorn.com. Stop in to get a tin at Ma and Pa's on 201 7th North Street in Liverpool, New York to get your half-price refills for the rest of your life. Come to Ma and Pa's for your holiday gift giving for family, friends, employees, and clients. And remember, for fundraising and events, to call 315-450-6272. That's 315-450-6272. Ma and Pa's Kettle Corn and Popcorn Factory. How corny are you?
This is Jimmer Sikowski, owner-operator of Chick-fil-A Cicero, 7916 Brewerton Road in Cicero, right in front of the Home Depot. I had a deep feeling that God wanted me to do something bigger with my life and to help people, help others. He kept putting Chick-fil-A in my life, and I realized as I was going through the franchise selection process that positively impacting the lives of others was really core to what we do here at Chick-fil-A. First of all, it starts with the food. The food is brought in fresh daily, and we bring in local produce. We prepare to order in the kitchen. We hand bread our chicken. We hand spin our milkshakes. It's great food. It doesn't taste like fast food. I think the second thing is the way people feel when they come in a Chick-fil-A restaurant. It's different. We try to treat people with intentional kindness here, which is very different and deeper than good customer service. And so I think it feels remarkable for most people to come in a Chick-fil-A restaurant. And then lastly, the impact that we try to have in the community is very different. It's a big part of the expectation of every operator of a Chick-fil-A restaurant is that they're actively engaged in their community, they're a leader in the community, and they're making a difference. When they realize that what we're striving to do is to shine a little light in their life, that's a very, very different experience than you will have in any other quick service restaurant. And it's that remarkable experience that I think people will emotionally connect with.
Avicoli's, located on the corner of Route 57 and Wetzel Road in Liverpool, New York, has been your trusted neighbor for decades. Located just steps from Liverpool High School, we're happy to have the Liverpool Warriors on-site, on-location broadcast at Avicoli's through Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora every single month, featuring student athletes, coaches, and administration throughout the year from Liverpool High School. Head out to Avicoli's today on the corner of Route 57 and Wetzel Road in Liverpool, New York, open Tuesday through Sunday for lunch, dinner, and drinks. We'd love to see you out there, and of course you can call them at 315-622-5100 for takeout, delivery, and catering. That's 315-622-5100, and also find them on myavicolis.com. That's myavicollis.com. Having peace of mind when you're out of town that your furry-loving friend is safe and sound means taking them to Canine Campground, because we all know that when it comes to the love of our pets, it goes well beyond the call of duty to make sure they're safe and sound. Right, Lily? So take a ride to 242 Johnson Street in East Syracuse, New York, and see Canine Campground and where your dog will be staying. In the classic cabin, the executive cabin, the grand cabin, or of course the luxury cabin, because if you know Lily, you know she loves luxury. Now you don't have to wait to the last minute to find a family member or a friend that'll take your dog for a few days. Call Canine Campground at 315-299-4013. That's 315-299-4013. Their drop-off and pickup times are Monday through Sunday. Check K9campground.com for more information. That's the letter K, the number 9, and campground spelled with a K.com. K9campground.com.
When you're going out of town, bring your dog to Canine Campground.
Carvel DeWitt, it's what happy tastes like. Do you know why? Because we make ice cream. Creamy, rich, flavorful ice cream. Not yogurt or iced milk like some of our competitors. Ice cream. Fresh, by hand, daily. For the calorie conscious, we have something new for you. Our new Carvelite. Same great flavor, creaminess, and texture of our regular ice cream with only 35 calories an ounce. So whether you want an ice cream cake, flying saucer, dasher, carvalanche, hard or soft ice cream, we will satisfy your craving with our fresh, handmade regular or new Carvelite ice cream. Carvel DeWitt. It's what happy tastes like.
The Wildcat Sports Pub in Camillus, New York is located on 3680 Milton Avenue in the Home Depot Plaza. It is your family-friendly sports bar and restaurant. Folks, some sports bars aren't family-friendly. Some family-friendly restaurants are not sports bars. The Wildcat Sports Pub in Camillus, New York is proud to be both. It is that marriage that you've been looking for years. The Wildcat Sports Pub is your home base for your sports bar and restaurant needs, games for the kids, indoor and outdoor activities, and enough things on the menu to come back every single week and get to try something new. They're open Sundays from noon to 8 p.m., Monday through Wednesday, 11 a.m. to 11 p.m., and Thursday through Saturday from 11 a.m. to midnight. For reservations and party information, call 315-487-2222 for the Wildcat family-friendly sports pub and restaurant.
GG Cards and Breaks. Like, comment, subscribe.
GG Cards and Breaks, coming to you on 639 Delmar Place in Syracuse, New York, is there for you all throughout the week. You'll find them Tuesday through Saturday, outside of holidays, Tuesday through Saturday from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. and on Sundays from 10 to 5 at GG Cards and Breaks for sports cards and trading cards. Awesome stuff to get for your family, for your loved ones, great things to get for the holidays, birthdays, whatever's going on in your life. GG Cards and Breaks provides an awesome opportunity to connect with your team, to connect with your favorite players, and of course, to connect with the trading cards that you love when it comes to Disney Lorcana, getting into those Disney characters, Yu-Gi-Oh!, Magic the Gathering, as well as Pokemon. So many things to collect. Definitely got to catch them all at GG Cards and Breaks, my sports card and trading card shop of choice for singles, packs, boxes, graded cards, rookie patch, autos, one-of-ones, and so much more, including every bit of supplies you need to protect your cards and be able to travel with them, go to shows, and do different things. GG Cards and Breaks provides all of it to you. If you've never collected before, you're going to walk in, see all their stuff, and walk out with everything you need to take care of your cards, display your cards, be able to move them from place to place, bring them to shows, and buy, sell, and trade. So definitely head over to GG Cards and Breaks. You will not be disappointed. Tremendous service, wonderful people, starting with Josh and Anthony on 639 Delmar Place in Syracuse, New York. Head over there and let them know that DT sent you. They are open Tuesday through Saturday from 10 to 6 and on Sundays from 10 to 5. And then obviously with this holiday season, make sure you make note of that because this is a holiday week this week. So for GG Cards and Breaks, just make a note to yourself here. I hope you got over there. I hope you got over there before today and got some cool stuff for the Christmas and holiday season for GG Cards and Breaks. They got a ton of amazing things. A lot of great stuff has come in. You could follow them on social media. Just look up GG Cards and Breaks. Look at the things that we share on our social media as well so you don't miss any of the great product that comes in to GG Cards and Breaks on 639 Delmar Place in Syracuse, New York. Our one-stop sports card and trading card shop. With that being said, here on Wake Up Call, I want to thank Murph for joining me for a Murph Monday and for all this college football playoff talk. I want to thank you for being a part of the show as always. With us up and down the East Coast, the Midwest, the West Coast, and all around the globe on YouTube.com and Facebook.com, both / WakeUpCallDT, and on WakeUpCallDT.podbean.com. So however you're watching and listening worldwide, live Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. Eastern Time, we thank you so very much for being a part of the broadcast. And, of course, you can find us on your favorite podcasting platforms: Amazon Music, Audible, iHeartRadio, iTunes, and Apple Podcasts. You could find us there as well. And make sure that you also go to Player FM, Podbean, Podchaser.com, Podvine, Spotify, TuneIn, and YouTube. Search Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora, or one word, Wake Up Call DT. A big time thanks to Brooklyn Pickle down in Southern Pines, North Carolina. You'll find them on 1788 Old Morganton Road in Southern Pines, North Carolina, right down the road from Pinehurst Golf Course. And of course, our partners here in Central and Upstate New York: Carvel DeWitt, the Wildcat Sports Pub, Servomation, Mother's Cupboard, Canine Camp Dog Daycare, Avicoli's, GG Cards and Brakes, Chick-fil-A Cicero, Ma and Pa's, the snack capital of the world, Canine Campground Dog Boarding, Great Lakes Honda City, Brian's Landing, and of course, we are the exclusive multimedia marketing partner of your Lemoyne College Dolphins. It's Fins Up every single month on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora. Find your Dolphins Wednesdays at 9 a.m. Eastern Time during Dolphin Time. You will find those Dolphins with us here on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora, with student athletes, coaches, administration, future Dolphins, and alumni all joining the broadcast, including our exclusives with the new athletic leader at Lemoyne, that being Phil Brown, who officially starts his post at Lemoyne on January 1st, 2025. So don't miss a single second of all of our content with Phil Brown, including our most recent special that we just aired on youtube.com/wakeupcalldt and on facebook.com/wakeupcalldt. Find all of our content by going to either one of those. Subscribe on YouTube, hit the notification bell, find our Lemoyne playlist on our YouTube channel, and you'll also find Lemoyne on wakeupcalldt.com's homepage and underneath the exclusive partners tab. For more information, go to LemoyneDolphins.com and Fins Up. The Bryan and Stratton College Bobcats of Syracuse are exclusive multimedia marketing partners with Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora. Find your Bobcats every single month. Men's and women's basketball, men's and women's soccer, and baseball, all here in what we call the Bobcat Buzz. An all-new Bobcat Buzz exclusive comes to you this Christmas Eve at 9 a.m. Eastern Time, tomorrow, December 24th, with the women's soccer head coach Alex Grigorita in a 2024 season in review and an overall look at the program that he's helped lead to 4 straight national championship title game berths, including a national championship title in 2021. You'll hear from him on the many topics that we have with Bryan and Stratton College of Syracuse, and that'll be happening on youtube.com and facebook.com, both /wakeupcalldt worldwide this Tuesday, December 24th at 9 a.m. Eastern Time. Of course, you can find all of our Bobcat content by going to youtube.com /wakeupcalldt. Click subscribe, hit the notification bell, find the BSC Syracuse playlist. You'll also find the Bobcats on wakeupcalldt.com's homepage and underneath the exclusive partners tab. For more information, go to syracuse.bscbobcats.com and go Bobcats. The Binghamton University Bearcats are exclusive multimedia marketing partners with Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora. Find your Bearcats every single Tuesday at 10 a.m. Eastern Time. The Bearcats will be with us 10 a.m. Eastern Time weekly in what we call Bearcat Time. And you can find all of our content with Binghamton University student athletes, coaches, and administration by going to youtube.com /wakeupcalldt. Click subscribe, hit the notification bell, and find our Binghamton playlist. You also find the Bearcats on wakeupcalldt.com's homepage and underneath the exclusive partners tab. For more information, go to binghamtonbearcats.com and go Bearcats. With that being said, I want to thank you for voting in our polls, the ones I put up last week. If you had to choose feet to the fire, who would you side with, the Yankees or the Mets? The Mets won an extremely close, one of the closest polls we've ever had, if not the closest, besides 50-50. The Mets won the poll. 50.9% of you, feet to the fire, would choose the Mets over the Yankees. 49.1% of you voted for the Yankees. Awesome poll. And if you had a vote, who would you have picked to win the Heisman Trophy for the 2024-25 college football season? Ashton Jeanty or Travis Hunter, who did win? 78.6% of you went with the one who won second place, Ashton Jeanty, and 21.4% agreed that Travis Hunter should have it. Congratulations to both gentlemen. By the way, from first place to second place in voting, it was the closest Heisman votes between first and second place ever in the history of the Heisman Trophy, which speaks volumes to Travis Hunter and Ashton Jeanty. Thanks to Murph from DT and Murphy. Thanks to you. Find us 24/7 on Facebook at Wake Up Call DT, X at Call DT, the former Twitter, and Instagram at Wake Up Call _DT. For now, from Wake Up Call to you. Merry Christmas Eve. Merry Christmas. Happy Hanukkah. Happy Kwanzaa. God bless you all. And be sure to be with us on Christmas Eve for our Bobcat special from on campus at Bryan and Stratton College of Syracuse on James Street. I send you all my love. I hope the best for you. I wish you a very Merry Christmas. And let's remember that Jesus is the reason for the season. God bless. No stress. Do your best. Have a beautiful day and a beautiful week and a beautiful Christmas, Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, and holiday season.